All right. Good afternoon. I'd now like to bring the regular scheduled meeting of the Township of Langley Council to order. And I would first like to begin by acknowledging the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and in particular acknowledge our relationships with the Katzie, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and Semiahmoo First Nations. And get to the right agenda here. Here we go. First item is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. Motion, please. Councillor Kuntz moves it. Second. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Whitmarsh. No discussion. All those in favor? Opposed and carries. Thank you. Next item is adoption of minutes, and there's 4 sets of minutes on our agenda. The regular council meeting of January 10th, the public hearing of January 10th, special council meeting for budget January 17th, special council meeting January 17th. Could I have a motion to adopt those minutes? Councillor Arneson moves, seconder Councillor Long. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It carries. Thank you. Now we move on to delegations, and we have 2 delegations with us today. And the first one is Tisha Kraft, and I'd ask Tisha to come forward to the mic and present. Just for both delegations information, you have 5 minutes to present to council, and not counting questions from council. So if you could just identify yourself, that would be great. Thank you. Welcome here.
Good afternoon. My name is Tisha Kraft, and I am a township resident. I reside on 196th Street and 36th Avenue in the Township of Langley. The city of Surrey is across the street from our residence. I'm here today to plead with you, Township of Langley, to help us stop the city of Surrey, who's planning on allowing on-street parking on the Surrey side of the street. Let me start with some history. The city of Surrey has approved 2 concrete tilt-up industrial buildings. The proposal for mixed employment designation and a community plan meetings for the Campbell Heights area started in February 2021. We received notice from Orion Construction that there was an ongoing information meeting in March to decrease the buffer zone at that time from 30 meters to 20 meters. I had sent an email to all of you requesting that we try to stop the reduction of the buffer zone, and I got confirmation from Councillor Richker, advised that the letter was sent to City of Surrey trying to keep the buffer zone at the 30 meters. We'd later learned that there was the developer in the City of Surrey had planned another meeting. They had decided at the meeting that there was going to be a new dead-end road put at 34A, which meant all the lights from the commercial traffic would be shining right into our residents, filling the existing ditch on the walkway, and creating the reduction of the buffer zone from 30 meters to 20 meters, which we had seen in the meeting that all the drawings had presented that way, so they were definitely moving ahead with the 20 meters. They wanted a pathway, a sidewalk to be part of the buffer zone, and adding a bike lane, and then they advised that all the viable trees on 196 and 36 would be retained. The residents who attended that meeting, including myself, wanted no bike lane. We wanted no walkway, no roadside parking, more coniferous trees to be added to block our unsightly views. Concerns over the increased traffic on 196 and the variable speeds were concerned, and in addition to the night shades to be put on the lights on these buildings. In April, we had another public meeting with the City of Surrey and the developer where they confirmed in writing that they listened to our concerns. They were going to remove the bike lane, remove the on-street parking, remove the sidewalk, and the multi-use pathway. They addressed the speeding concerns with the City of Surrey's Transport Department. They were keeping the buffer zone at 20 meters and putting up a 2-meter attenuating wall from the east to west of the property. Removal of the pedestrian pathways. The City of Surrey would allow the installation of the buffer zone prior to construction. They also advised that it would start in winter 2021. And that there would be a no left-hand turn on 36th Avenue into the property, mitigating any traffic, diverting them from 32nd to 192. After the last meeting, we felt like some of our concerns with the City of Surrey were addressed. However, in that time, I had communicated with the developer and the City of Surrey many times, still continuing to oppose the reduction of the buffer. Sadly, there was no changes in the outcome of the buffer zone. Construction started December 20th of 2021 at 7 a.m. At that time, they removed all viable trees on 36, and most on 196. It was devastating, and it was the construction to see that the city of Surrey's commitment to protecting their forests and ecosystems was not upheld. I learned that the city of Surrey developers had changed their decision without public consultation and were adding the street parking back. So this means the reason why that they were removing those trees was to fill the ditch and make for city parking. At which point, I was talking to the city planner at the city of Surrey, and they confirmed it. I then talked here to the Township of Langley's General Manager of Engineering, Raman Safi, confirmed that they did not make such a request with the city of Surrey to confirm that they wanted the parking. Whereas the city of Surrey said the Township of Langley wants the parking. I feel that both municipalities were pointing fingers at each other regarding this development on 36 and 196. And as a resident, we were told that there'd be no street parking and our concerns were not addressed. There was no further public consultation regarding the changes that affected our daily lives with increased traffic, our property values, and our personal safety. We have young children that live in our home, and now we're going to have increased traffic with the commercial development across the street. I do feel it's too late to stop the trees that are gone. Too late to stop the development, but it's not too late to stop the parking. On 196th Street, again, I plead with the Township of Langley councilmen to help us and the residents to stop the on-side parking. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got some questions from council. We'll start with Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, I want to just highlight again, thank you for delegating today. I think it's really important that we're aware of this. And also wanted to add just for and I'm going to listen to the members of council and review the material again, but I really appreciate delegating and letting us know about the proceeding in the fashion that you outlined, but also wanted to raise for your attention the potential opening of 24th Avenue and still working through the city of Surrey with that. Potentially that gives us some options to consider these items in the context of opening that road for the city of Surrey. So I think there might be some hope there to improve this situation with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Richter?
Yes, I want to thank you too very much for making a delegation and bringing this to council's attention. I know that you've sent and some of the other residents have sent letters all the way along expressing your extreme concern at the loss of privacy and property values, etc., from this development on the Surrey side. I just wanted to confirm with you, so you were told by the Surrey planning staff that Langley had asked for on-street parking, but Langley planning staff said they never asked for on-street parking on 196. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I have it in writing from both parties.
Okay, so what you would like council to do then is try to stop the on-street parking on Surrey's side of the road, which we may not be able to do because it's Surrey's side of the road. But are there things that could be done on Langley's side of the road that might help you and the other residents out?
At this point, there is no signage on either side of the road into any parking. There's no street signs as to even a speed zone. So there's multiple things that are going to happen here if we have increased traffic on our road. There's going to be extra traffic, speeding down our road, parking on our road on both sides. It won't just be on the Surrey side. They won't know the difference between Surrey and Langley. They're going to park on both sides.
Okay, but is there room right now on the Langley side for on-street park? Oh, there is.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So we need to put no parking signs in at minimum there.
At minimum.
Yeah.
And I'm here to stop the exit. The city of Surrey plans on having no pathway there. So there should be no, and the frontage property for these tilt-up buildings is facing 36th Avenue. They're not even facing 196. There's no reason for have on-site street parking there. The frontage is on the other street. They're not on 196. They do not, there's gonna be no entrances to those tilt-up buildings on 196. They're gonna only enter on 36th Avenue. So there's no need for any street parking on either side.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming forward today. The way the process goes for us at this point, just for your information, is that at the end of the meeting under other business, we can make a motion to refer a delegation to staff for a report. And I just wanted you to know that I will be making that motion at the end of today's meeting to refer your delegation for a report on this. I agree with you that I think we need to step in and do whatever we can to stop the parking on the Surrey side, and if we can't, then at least put no parking on the Langley side. So thank you again, Ms. Kraft, for coming out today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah,
Still-
Mrs. Kraft, thank
Just,
you.
I have about 3 councillors still
Okay,
have questions, so.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're going to be busy today. Thank you
Okay,
for,
that's
thank you,
okay.
Mrs. Kraft. And it's good
I'm
that you're busy.
invested in this.
It's good that, thank you for coming in. I actually live in the area, but not where you live. I'm further up. I'm around 24th and 200th area. And no, I don't want that road going through, but I was very happy to see that Surrey in their wisdom put a light finally at 28th and 192nd. Now, it must be tough living in that area because they have had construction going on for years and it's not stopping.
No, it's not.
And so you're here in equipment. Now, we did send through a motion of council, we said something to the city of Surrey and with the mayor's letterhead. And it's interesting that the folks from Surrey talked a bit about the application showing recognizing natural habitats and protecting the water table and buffering, and they said meet the separation intent with a minimum building separation of 30 meters. Okay, then we read our stuff. I drilled right down and I found, unfortunately, it appears the staff's previous indication no less than 30 meters must be, but recognizing the current industrial land requirements, and which is a climate, which means they want more industrial land in the region. So that means significant buffering, it can be reduced to 20 meters. And I'm just saying, to me, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No, we
So
agree.
on one hand, they're saying that's a requirement. On the other hand, they're saying because, and it's hidden in here on page, 13 of our agenda. And I'm not sure if City of Surrey staff are pressured or something to say certain things. I don't know. I can't. But we have to keep this is one battle, but we have to keep all the battles going because there's a lot of industrial land. I know that they have other things going. But as Councillor Richter said, there'll be a motion at the end of the meeting, and the parking is a concern, the noise is a concern, all sorts of things. You just got to keep the fight going, and I admire you for doing what you're doing because this is not an easy fight. And how much industrial land do you need? We have industrial parks in Langley, but how much do you need? It's huge there. Was it 1,000 acres or something? Why can't they just follow their own rules with a simple 30-meter and forget the parking? Anyway, that's just the way I come, and you'll hear more from us. But thank you
I agree.
very, very,
Thank you.
keep up the fight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for coming today. I would echo a number of the comments. It is very frustrating to be on just the other side of these decisions and to know that staff, as a result of direction, is being allowed to undertake changes to very long-standing kind of strategies. And it really is of great concern in particular because I think that kind of precedent, unfortunately, once you start to let the cow out of the barn, is going to be a problem all along 196, because as soon as somebody gets that special dispensation, it would occur to me that anybody else who was in listening distance would say, well, you know, we could use the same thing. Obviously, as Councillor Ferguson has alluded to, the high cost of industrial land is an incentive to do that, but no rationale why you should be allowed to go forward. I did have a question, actually. I would be supportive of this going to staff, because I noted that there was some interest in potentially considering what could be done on the other side of the road, on the Langley side, for mitigation. And so I wondered, is there a similar ditch configuration on that side?
There is a ditch on our side as well, yes.
Well, maybe what needs to be considered within a referral back to staff is this concept that potentially, if this goes forward on the Surrey side, that maybe what we could do is, just as a suggestion, off the top of my head, is to do a similar thing but put trees there, because that would help to mitigate some of the offsetting. Because you referred to old growth trees, I can imagine that there were very large and substantial trees, unfortunately, that have been taken out. And even if they're going to put something around the perimeter, they would be rather smaller and, you know, probably not, or for a long time, get to that size. So just in terms of shielding the individuals in your neighborhood, possibly could be something that we could consider. I don't know how much that would cost, but you know, I think we have to look at all remedies in order to protect your neighborhood.
That would be appreciative.
Yeah.
To your comments about
Thank you.
the reduction of the 30 to 20 meters, this will be the first property in Campbell Heights that has a reduction that was somewhat approved, or somewhat gone under the wire to be approved. So when we noted that it was good, the reduction was going to happen, we were definitely fighting with the city of Surrey, and well, quite of my neighbors are sending notices, including to yourselves. So it will set a precedent that this will be the first one. And those old trees, honestly, one of them they removed was in the ditch. And there was no need to remove that one in the ditch. I was standing out there just a couple days before crying. And they're like, ma'am, you're in the falling zone. I'm like, I'm in the middle of the road. And so I was in the fall zone, and they removed this tree just so they could fill in the ditch for this on-street parking that they promised us that was not going to be there. It was disheartening. It was so sad, to be honest, about this ditch.
Got Councillor Whitmarsh next.
Hi there. Thank you for coming today. Appreciate you coming on this. This Area 196, I know this road fairly well. I'm on it quite a bit. And this road appears to me to be, it's not a fairly narrow road. And when I'm looking at it, it has a lane, and then it has a sort of a bike lane, or I don't know if it's designated as a bike lane, but it has a shoulder. And then it goes right into the ditch. It looks like on both sides of the road. So you had mentioned that there would be room to park cars, but if they parked, would they not be partially in the ditch? Like, it seems like it's pretty narrow, that if the shoulder's not wide enough for a car.
No, they're filling in the ditch to make room for the parking.
Right, but
On the
on
Surrey
the
side.
Langley side, I think you mentioned there'd be room to park on the Langley
You
side.
would be over the white line, yes, for sure.
Yes.
But there is room to park, yeah.
Okay,
You
so
could park there, yeah.
they're filling in the ditch and then gonna asphalt it and widen that
That's
area?
correct.
Just on the Surrey side?
That's on the Surrey side, yes.
Okay, and do you know if they also have are they making access into the area from 36, or is all the access into their industrial buildings coming from 36 Avenue?
There's to be zero access on 196.
Okay,
All the access is gonna be from a right-hand turn only off of 36 going west off of 192.
oh, no left-hand turn
No
heading
left-hand-
west?
Supposedly, that's what they've told us.
Okay,
Because our road isn't subject to the weights of the trucks on
Right.
36 Avenue.
right,
That's the other concern, is that all these individual, these trucks that are gonna be coming down our road on 36, it's not a truck route. 32nd has been designated as a truck route to 192. So they have told us that they were gonna divert the traffic through and force a right-hand turn, not a left-hand turn off of 36, and zero entrance off of 196.
right, okay. Great, well, thank you for coming. I certainly appreciate that this is a problem and a real concern for that road, and thank you for coming today and
Thank you very
speaking up.
much.
Thank you. Councilor Richter, you have another question or?
Yeah, just a follow-up question. Ms. Kraft, I wonder, the letter that you got, was it a letter that you got from the Surrey staff saying Langley had asked for the on-street parking?
It was a reply to my email that I
Okay,
got back from the Surrey planner.
okay, I'm wondering if you might share that with Mr. Rahman, if you haven't already shared it with him,
I
or
did.
Mr. Safey, sorry. You did share it?
I did share it with him as well, and I got zero reply.
Oh, okay, but yeah, but he did reply on
Right.
the fact that we had sent a letter to, our mayor actually sent a letter directly to the Surrey mayor asking for consideration of these. The other thing I want, and I'm getting a little nervous now because Surrey's trying to add 660 more acres through the South Campbell Heights development. So I wonder if this plan of attack on reducing the setback is going to carry all the way down to 16th Avenue from 36th on the Surrey side, and in order to connect up that South Surrey part with the north or the South Campbell Heights to the North Campbell Heights. Okay, but thank you. I'm glad you shared that information with Mr.
Let me
Safey.
clarify on the email. When the email was forwarded to him regarding what the Township of Langley was doing, he said that he went back to May of last year in 2021. However, once I went back with my concerns about the roadside parking, the trees, and all these things, he confirmed that he did not send an email to the city of Surrey regarding the on-street parking. He came back and said there's nothing more that they could do.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I don't think without direction of council, he basically fulfilled what council had asked, was to send a letter to Surrey expressing our concerns, and that was done, as has been mentioned. So, well, thank you very much for coming out.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the next delegation is Ms. Lisa Roman from the University of Fraser Valley Rowing Club. Welcome here. And in your report, you mentioned that you're a gold medal winner. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Did you bring it with?
Yes, I did.
Excellent. Well, got to show it to us. Come on, be proud.
Yes, I will do that.
Thank
so
you.
I'm just here. I started at UFV back in 2007 when I first started rowing. That was the first place I rowed. I'm a Langley resident, grew up, raised here. Left for 7.5 years, 8 years to do training in Ontario. Came back, just bought a house here back in 2019. Yes, 2019. So I went to the Olympics, finished my Olympics, came back, and now I'm actually just voluntarily coaching the University of Fraser Valley. Obviously with COVID, it's fallen apart. There's no money, nothing. So Rowing BC has asked if we could push to host Head of the Fort Regatta, which is located in the Fort Langley Bedford Channel. So I have to pay the Township of Langley fee of $795, I believe. $798.36 is the rental fee for the facility to use for 1 day. So this is March 19th, 2022. I've already gotten the contract, and basically I asked if there was any way that I could get this money waived to host this regatta. So that's why I'm here. The purpose of hosting the regatta is to not only provide opportunity for athletes, but it's also to help pay. We have a $3,000 boathouse fee, which is also Township of Langley. So the boathouse is rented by 3 different separate clubs, and everyone has to pay a portion. So our portion is $3,000. So last year was obviously Township of Langley gave us a pretty good discount because of COVID, but so now I'm just in the process of trying to raise money to be able to pay that fee so that we can move forward. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And yeah, I have my Olympic gold medal if you guys would like to see it.
Thank you. I do have some questions from council. I'll go to those first. Councilor Richter?
Yeah, so I was just wanting to clarify, when you're hosting this regatta, the monies that you're going to raise from the regatta will be going towards paying your boat rent, or the rental fee for the boat storage area, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And again, on the question of process, normally what we do at the end of the meeting under other business is we put a motion to refer to staff for a report. Are you working with any specific timelines? Like, when do you need to have this fee paid by?
Well, the Township of Langley has the agreement. It's already, they told me, the people that have been working on it said that they've already communicated with the different areas. Like, so it's the Bedford Landing, that's the Bedford Plaza, the Riverside Community Room. Like, these are all the facilities that we rent out typically. We've done this. This regatta has been hosted for 11 years. It hasn't been hosted for the last 2 years because of COVID. And so they have in the past, like, UFV has always paid the fees. Like, we've always had the money. The Rowing Society has always had the money to pay the fees. But we're just in a situation right now where we obviously can't pay them. And the university refuses to give us any money because they don't have any money either. So they're kind of in the same thing with COVID. So we're kind of in this situation where we're just trying to pay for the facilities. And the facilities, of course, have increased over $200 between the last time we tried to rent this out to now. So the last time we rented it was like $500 and something, and now it was 526, and now it's 798. So it's increased by about $200 and some change. So.
Well, the other thing that the council can do to help you out here is we have what's called a council contingency fund. So I think at the end of the meeting under other business, if it's appropriate and we can just put a motion on today to pay for, I don't think we can waive the fee, but we can pay the fee for you out of council contingency.
Okay.
So that would be my preferred approach at the end of today's meeting. And if that doesn't work, then refer it to staff, and then they could come back with the recommendation that we pay it out of council contingency. But I'm very supportive of helping you and the club move forward, and I think it's wonderful you're volunteering your time to train the next generation of athletes.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into a debate with Councillor Richter, but we'll have to have a discussion. Have you applied for some grants at all from the township?
Not through the township. I have been looking at grants. This summer, I'm hoping to do something with like Indigenous, because I know there's like plenty of opportunity for sports with Indigenous. And I've actually communicated. We actually met with Brandon Gabriel. He's an artist that is from Kwantlen Nations. I'm not sure. You guys probably know who he is. So he's actually donating an emblem that will be our representative emblem for Head of the Fort, which we're super excited about. And then he knows some other people from Kwantlen Nation are going to come, and they're actually going to do a send-off at the beginning of the regatta is the plan. So they're going to do like a drumming send-off. So these are just like little things we want to include for it. But I have looked at some grants. They're just difficult to come by, and I personally don't know how to like actually write out a real grant.
Well, we can
at
help.
this point.
Yeah, I think we can help you on that, because there are grants that the township have for sports activities and for showcasing Langley and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Which would be much more suitable than, I mean, council contingency is a fund, but then we have to consider that we have to fund everybody. And I've been on council a while, so I remember we've had the chess people, we've had the quilters. So there's a huge array of people that would like to have the fees waived. So it's kind of it's kind of difficult to do one and not others, but there are grant programs that we can probably have staff look into for you. So as Councilor Richter said, at the end of the meeting, we'll certainly try and get staff to help us to get some kind of solution to your dilemma there. But thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
So a couple of questions yet. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thanks for coming today, and certainly know how difficult it is in the sports world with the last couple of years with COVID and so on, how difficult it's been financially. I get my question just is around the Fort Regatta, and who sort of competes in this regatta, and what is it like a university age, or is it all open, or?
So it's open category. So it's mostly delegated towards juniors and masters. So that's kind of the base of the people that we want to take. And that's mostly because a lot of the juniors don't have a lot of competitive racing, especially here in the Lower Mainland. So there really is nowhere to row between, like Burnaby is the only other rowing hub in Langley, or that's like close to Langley. So a lot of people that live in Langley would go to Burnaby, or you can go to Delta. Those are like the only areas that you can really row. So the Langley Channel is basically the only place where any Surrey, Langley, or Abbotsford athletes that want to row would have to come to. So like right now, I have athletes that live in Burnaby that are coming to Langley to train with me. I have athletes in Abbotsford that come out to Fort Langley to train with me. So the plan is to have mostly like juniors from like Vancouver, Delta, Burnaby, them all coming to be part of the regatta. And then we're hopeful that some people from the island will come. There's been a big push through like Rowing BC to try to get athletes coming from the island over here because we do have facilities to host these regattas, and we're always having to go to the island to do rowing because there's a big base of rowing over on the island. So we're just trying to create more opportunities here on the mainland for the athletes that are actually here on the Lower Mainland. So, and I think for me, like I see potential in Fort Langley being something bigger than what it has. It's a great, like a really good facility to row on. And like a lot of people don't even know it exists. So like most lakes are only like 2.5 kilometers. You know, like Elk Lake, you really only get like the longest stretch you can get at Elk Lake is about 3 kilometers. I can get almost 6K in Fort Langley of like a straight one-way straight. And like to me, like as an athlete that's been there, done that, been at the top, like that would be to actually have the national team come out here and train would be amazing, and it would be great for people to see it because it's such like a great thing to see. But there's just never been any push for having anything like that here, and so I hope to like down the road create that or like host like junior camps and stuff out of Fort Langley is kind of like the bigger picture that I see. But yeah, right now it's just trying to get on our feet and get something going, and yeah.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you for that. And certainly rowing is such a great sport and outdoors, which is something we've been encouraging over the last 2 years to be more and more outdoors. So I'm certainly prepared and happy to work with council and coming with a solution. So thanks for coming today.
Awesome. Thanks.
Councillor Kunst?
Oh, hi, congratulations. Thanks for coming to council. I know it's not always easy to be the person to be, you know, to stand here in front and ask for money or ask for help, but it is why we're here to help our constituents. So I know I'll be supportive of finding a way to help your group. What year was it that you won your gold medal?
This past summer in 2020.
Did you paddle with Johnson's?
Did I what?
Did you paddle with the Johnson girl from Cloverdale?
Hillary.
Hillary.
Yes. So she was in the pair and I was in the 8.
Oh, okay.
So yes, but I have trained with Hillary for many, many years.
Awesome. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. I think a lot of my questions have been answered. And you know, we should be able to find you something either through a grant or something like that. I remember when the folks, I think at Park Lane, came to us and said, you know, we want to put together some kind of a rowing facility and work with the rowing club. That was many years ago. And that, and now just saying, going on the next steps. I hear all sorts of good things about that facility. I've been there many times. I'm not a rower myself, but you know, if I fall in the water, I can't swim, but I don't want to bring the rest of the guys down. But so the thing is, I think it's important, and I think I like your idea. Stay with us, work with the Park and Rec department, because if we can expand or do other things to promote Langley and promote sport, recreation, get more of those gold medals. They even asked me if I wanted to participate one time, but I might be getting a bit old for that. But anyway, thank you for coming. We appreciate your enthusiasm too. And go Canada, go.
Awesome.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, thank you for delegating. I'm here on Zoom today. I found that pretty interesting. I'm happy to hear about that. This is getting back underway for Fort Langley, but I also wanted to just reiterate or ask again. Maybe I didn't hear the answer. When the timeline is for you to have this sorted out by?
As long as the city has the facilities on hold and nobody else can take that date, I don't think it's a rush. Like, I don't think we have to have it done by a certain day. I think they never gave me an actual day I had to have it completed by, but they have told me that my application is set for that date. So I would assume that that date has been taken care of in terms of someone else trying to, you know, like I don't know who's renting out these facilities, but I would assume they're in contract. So I don't really actually know.
Let's assume that the dates are set aside for you. I think it's safe to assume that that's the case.
Yeah.
The other thing too is I wanted to highlight we did receive a substantial amount from the province in COVID relief funding. And this seems like, something that's intended for that. Something that's affected by COVID and needs a little bit of assistance to get back up and running again. Like you said before, this has always been covered. And just to get it back going again after COVID, need a little bit of help. I don't see this as the other examples that were given. And I look forward to the discussion. This is an easy one for me. And I really wish other groups that had similar challenges would come forward, and then we could do it for more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I was actually, it's funny, Ferguson, I was there when they actually built that facility. Like I was actually rowing, because it was built in 2008 or 9, I believe was the year it was built. And we were rowing out of the big old mill business. There was a mill building, like an old building.
McDonald's
and we had
Theater,
our boats in the mill building and used to walk them down this crickety, like tiny ramp and go in the water. And then we had to take everything out of there and move it to the opposite side. And we actually, so I was there during that whole building process of that building being there. So, and then I never really got to stick around and use it. So it's nice to be able to go back and be a part of it. So
Very good.
yeah, if you guys want to see my medal and hold it, I'm more than happy to share it. So you just let me know.
While you're doing that, I'll just make a comment. My exposure to rowing was I read the book, The Boys in the Boat, and that's the 1936 Olympics, the men's team. And I learned so much about rowing and eights. Eights, it's incredible what you have to do in eights. You have to get along with all those other people and be in time. So it's quite a team sport. And congratulations on your achievements. That's a great book if people want to learn about rowing and the challenges. It's a men's team in 1936 Olympics and the U.S. men's team, how they came together. University of Washington, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the intention is to like go around Langley and actually
Yeah.
do more like school stuff. But with COVID, I've just been a little hesitant and resistant because they're not really. I've done a couple school presentations just with like close people that I know that are teachers that have really asked and wanted me to come, but I haven't been able to do a lot of Langley stuff, and I'm just kind of resisting until.
Yeah, it clears up.
Down,
Yeah, but you're inspiration to a lot of young athletes.
Yeah.
And I know they look up to people like you, and you're their hero, and you're obviously doing a great job as being an ambassador for sport and for your sport. So thank you very much. Better get it back from Fergie.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we move on to presentations. So we have an update on the Surrey Langley SkyTrain project, and we would like to welcome the representatives from the Ministry of Integrated Transportation and Infrastructure Services. So I'll let, guess we're all online. Here we are, Mr. Volk. Who's going to take it away? I'll let you introduce the team or whoever's the lead here. I'll turn it over to you. Welcome here.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Your Worship, and greetings to you and to members of Council. My name is Kevin Volk, Assistant Deputy Minister of Integrated Transportation and Infrastructure Services at the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. I'd like to acknowledge to start that I am coming to you from downtown Victoria on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples and the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. I can introduce the staff that I have with me here today, starting with the project team. Jennifer McLean, Executive Project Director, Surrey Langley SkyTrain Project from the Transportation Investment Corporation. Leslie Ballman, Executive Director, Major Projects and Alternate Procurement with the Ministry of Transportation. Trish Rorison, Executive Director, Transportation Programs with the Ministry. Shannon Price, Senior Manager, Strategic Real Estate. Alexis Pavlich, Director, Strategic Engagement with Transportation Investment Corporation. And Trevor Paul, Senior Manager, Stakeholder Engagement and Communications. I'd also like to welcome Jeff Busby, Vice President of Engineering with TransLink. The Surrey Langley SkyTrain project team has made some significant advancements over the last several months and is now in a position to begin communicating out about the project. The plan is to first present an introduction and overview to Mayor and Council. And then following that, begin meeting with individual stakeholders while maintaining ongoing dialogue with participating Indigenous groups, and then moving to a round of public engagement this spring. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Leslie Ballman, Executive Director of Major Projects with the Ministry. Leslie.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks very much for having us here today. I just want to begin with a quick overview of the evolution of this project, which is going to truly transform the region. So in 2014, the Regional Mayor's Council identified the need for 27 kilometers of rapid transit on 3 priority corridors, which were 104th Avenue, King George Boulevard, and Fraser Highway. And while LRT was initially identified as the technology of choice, in late 2018, early 2019, the shift was made to begin with the Fraser Highway corridor and use SkyTrain as the technology. And then between 2018 and 2020, TransLink undertook planning and design development for stage 1 of the project, from King George train station to Fleetwood, which was based on the available funding at that time. And then TransLink expected that the 7-kilometer extension would be in service by 2025. However, in 2020, the effects of COVID were felt province-wide, and funding for the project became unclear. And then in late 2020, the province looked for opportunities to support the ongoing development of the region's transit network, and they committed to deliver the entire 16-kilometer project from King George Station to Langley City. And then in July of 2021, the province secured $1.3 billion in funding from the federal government and confirmed the intent to deliver the project all the way to Langley. And then by constructing this project all in one go, it will enable the entire line to open in 2028, which is a full 2 years earlier than if it was built in multiple stages. And it's also estimated that it will save approximately $500 million. This project is a priority for the province and is a key component of BC's economic recovery by creating more jobs and opportunities for British Columbians for years to come. And the province is excited to be delivering such a transformative infrastructure project that's not only going to reshape the region, but it's going to stimulate opportunities for housing, employment, and active transportation. The team has been very hard at work on the project with design development, environmental assessments, and engagement, as you'll soon hear from Jennifer. Next slide. So the area south of the Fraser is one of the fastest growing areas in the region. The population of the city of Surrey, the city of Langley, and the township of Langley is projected to increase by 420,000 people and 147,000 new jobs by 2050. As the population south of the Fraser continues to grow, so too will the demand for transit. This is why this rapid transit project, which, as you've heard, forms part of the 2014 Mayor's 10-year vision and is so important. The province is pleased to deliver this crucial infrastructure project on behalf of the region and provide opportunities with the objective to support sustainable multimodal transportation choices to better connect the region, support integrated development that includes safe and accessible active transportation to affordable housing, services, employment, and other destinations. It's also going to foster healthy communities and the environment, create economic development and job growth, and deliver on the Mayor's Council 10-year vision. This investment in expanded transit south of the Fraser serves as the catalyst to create flourishing, connected communities. Next slide, please. So as the township starts to update its official community plan, a neighborhood plan around Willowbrook Roll, we expect to see the vision of transit density and land use at the 196th Street Station. And in fact, the Supportive Policies Agreement, or SPA, that the township has been working on in partnership with the province, TransLink, and Metro Vancouver, or sorry, not Metro Vancouver, the city and City of Surrey and the City of Langley. We're also working with Metro Vancouver on the transit-orientated development study around Willowbrook Mall and the 196th Street Station. And the integrated development around new stations presents opportunities to advance key government priorities, such as affordable housing, meeting the objectives of Clean BC, and unlocking economic and social benefits for people across the region. And the impact that transit has on shaping growth as well is well documented, and the need for transit responsive land use designations by municipalities to ensure that transit investment is optimized will be required for the corridor. We're being intentional in the design of the stations to support future adjacent forms of development, which will help create seamless transitions for passengers to move them between transit and shops, restaurants, services, work, and at home. There are successful examples across the region that serve as models for this type of integrated development, including the Marine Drive Station in South Vancouver. Next slide, please. Working with local governments to grow the region's active transportation network is also a key priority for the province, with the goal of providing safe, accessible, and healthy transportation options for your community. A target in the province's climate action plan, Clean BC, as well as BC's active transportation strategy, is to double the percentage of trips by active transportation modes by the year 2030. The Surrey Langley SkyTrain project provides opportunities to increase pathways that support modes of active transportation, such as walking, cycling, wheelchairs, or scooters, and facilities connecting communities, prioritizing healthy lifestyles, reducing greenhouse gases, and it provides a cost-effective multimodal transportation options, including for those accessing new transit stations. The project, with its active transportation elements, supports local government efforts to achieve Vision Zero targets, as well as regional targets, like the 850-kilometer network of major bikeways that is outlined in TransLink's Draft Future Regional Transportation Strategy, T2050. As we identify ways to integrate active transportation into the SLS corridor, we'll continue to work with the cities of Surrey, the Township of Langley, and the City of Langley to optimize possibilities, as well as to identify ways to encourage more people in the region to choose active transportation when traveling to transit stations and facilities. I'm now going to pass it over to Jennifer McLean, who will walk through the specifics on the SLS project. Jennifer, if you might be on mute.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you, Leslie. The Surrey Langley SkyTrain project will extend the Expo line 16 kilometers along Fraser Highway on an elevated guideway from King George SkyTrain Station in Surrey to 203 Street in Langley City. The project includes 8 stations, 3 transit exchanges, some parking spaces, and new SkyTrain vehicles. Right now, we're in the process of determining the procurement model, which in addition to the contract work for the guideway itself, includes tracks, stations, and all the integrated systems, such as the automatic train control system and all the communication and power supply systems. The alignment generally runs within the road right-of-way, allowing us to plan for safe, user-friendly, and accessible facilities for pedestrians and cyclists who are accessing the stations and the surrounding areas. And we will integrate with local active transportation infrastructure wherever possible. The project also provides opportunities for exciting transit-oriented developments at several of the station sites. Next slide, please. We're in the process right now of confirming our design work, environmental conditions, engagement requirements, and other project details. To facilitate the future construction of the Surrey Langley SkyTrain, there is significant advanced work to relocate utilities along the Fraser Highway alignment underway. By undertaking this work before the major construction begins, it will provide the construction contractor with greater certainty about site conditions. It also provides a more efficient process with respect to the project design and construction by mitigating the potential for cost increases and schedule delays. Some of this work includes raising transmission lines where they cross the alignment at 2 different locations, undergrounding some distribution lines at 3 different locations, and initiating design and cost estimating to raise transmission lines where they cross the alignment at the CP rail crossing just east of Willowbrook Mall. We're also developing a conceptual design for our power propulsion system, which powers all of the line along the alignment. And we're also in the process of initiating some property acquisitions to accommodate the guideway and the stations. Reflecting on the magnitude of this $3.95 billion infrastructure project, this $128 million advanced works package is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of project-related job growth and economic stimulus in the years to come. I'd like to draw your attention to the image on this slide, which depicts a rendering of the 140th Street station at the edge of Green Timbers in Surrey. The project team designed this station to minimize impacts on this urban forested area. The station has a smaller footprint as possible, so it doesn't encroach on the surrounding treed areas or the local aquatic and fishery sources. We engage community groups committed to environmental preservation and sustainability to get their input and feedback on this station design, as well as the alignment through Green Timbers in particular. The Surrey Langley SkyTrain project is not required to undergo a formal provincial or federal environmental assessment, largely due to the fact the alignment will run along an existing urban transportation corridor. However, the province is committed to a robust analysis of environmental conditions, impacts, and mitigations related to the project, just as we did for the Broadway subway project. An environmental screening review, or ESR, is underway for the full 16-kilometer project. It's based on terms of reference that were developed in 2019, and its scope includes impacts and mitigations for noise and vibration, fisheries and aquatics, vegetation and wildlife, air quality and GHGs, as well as several other screening elements. We are going to provide an ESR update to the public as part of engagement this year. Next slide, please. Engagement is a key element of the Surrey Langley SkyTrain project and is advancing through several streams. First of all, we've been engaging with First Nations. The province is committed to a strong working relationships with affected Indigenous communities. As you know, the provincial government passed the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act into law in November 2019. Stemming from the Declaration Act, the province has been developing a province-wide whole-of-government roadmap towards reconciliation. And as part of the Crown's commitment to collaboration and transparency with Indigenous groups, robust parameters such as engagement requirements, standards of conduct, and opportunity identification to help guide the work that we do. The transition of the project from Translate to the ministry, including Indigenous relations, has occurred with the recognition of greater ministry obligations to consult and to accommodate. The ministry is working closely with 6 Indigenous groups where the project occurs within their core asserted and agreed upon traditional territories or near to reserve lands. These are Katzie First Nation, Kwantlen First Nation, Matsqui First Nation, Musqueam Indian Band, Semiahmoo First Nation, and Tsawwassen First Nation. These Indigenous groups have participated to date in archaeological work throughout the project's development and have also been involved in the development and assessment of the ESR process, including by reviewing the ESR scope of works and the study terms of reference, participating in the archaeological fieldwork and monitoring, and reviewing the ESR reports to date. Further, the province has signed agreements to support the participation of Indigenous groups in these works. The province is continuing to engage with the 6 nations regarding this project, its impacts upon the nation's asserted interests, and opportunities for partnership and participation. As noted on the slide, there are specific engagement topics for the coming year, as well as discussions on employment and business opportunities and cultural recognition. Next slide, thank you. We are also engaging with stakeholders. So the province will be working closely with you and other key stakeholders, notably local community groups, businesses, institutions, and residents in Surrey and Langley. Notably, the project team aims to reach out to diverse and perhaps underrepresented audiences through a robust gender-based analysis plus, or GBA plus process. That includes consideration and application of GBA plus analytical tools and best practices throughout the life cycle of the project, including the design development, procurement, and construction phases. Finally, we will also be engaging with the public. We're in the process right now of planning for a public engagement in spring of 2022. And we're excited to share our project details with the public, including an updated reference concept design for the full 16-kilometer project, updates on the environmental screening review, and on Indigenous engagement. Next slide, please. So work on the project has been full steam ahead. We're confirming design and environmental conditions, advanced utilities relocations, and a plan for engaging with key stakeholders in the public, all of which will feed into our business case, which is under development. We aim to have the business case approved by fall of this year, which will then trigger the start of the procurement process and then construction once a contract has been awarded to the proponent. At this time, the expected in-service date for the full 16-kilometer Surrey-Langley SkyTrain is late 2028. Next slide, thank you. As noted, we're hard at work to advance this project as expeditiously as possible. So we're going to continue to hold our regular technical working group meetings with municipal staff to confirm our reference design concept and further explore opportunities for integrated developments. We're in the process of developing or finalizing some of our key agreements, such as municipal access agreements and the broader supportive policy agreements, which help to ensure success of the project by spelling out key goals and objectives around housing and active transportation, for example. We look forward to continuing to work with our municipal partners on these important agreements, and we're relying on our partners to meet these key timelines, which are instrumental to the successful delivery of the projects. We're going to continue with our Indigenous stakeholder and public engagement, including a plan to provide City Council members with project updates like this one on a regular basis moving forward. And we're pressing ahead with both our environmental screening review and the delivery of advanced works. Thank you. I'll now hand things back to Kevin for closing remarks and open up the floor for any questions and answers.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you, Mayor and Council, for your time. We hope you found this project update very informative, and we look forward to answering any questions you might have.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that presentation and for bringing us up to date on where the province is with this project. I know it seems like a long ways away, 2028, but I know it'll be here before you know it. And I remember the Expo 86 line came through, and that took a lot of planning too, I'm sure. And now it's aging, and we're still adding on to it. But thank you very much. I'll start with Councillor Richter.
Yes, and thank you for your presentation. I did have one question, and it's mainly because of the increases that we're seeing in the costs of just about everything these days as we head into the COVID recovery period and the supply chain shortages and everything else. I'm just wondering, the budget that you've set aside for this, are you anticipating you're going to have to up that budget amount between now and either 2024 or 2028 when it's delivered? I think it's 2024 when you're awarding the contract. Are you anticipating, and do you have contingencies built in to deal with those costs, what could be cost escalations?
Thank you, Councillor. At this time, we're completing the business case work, and to answer your question, we do believe that the project budget that we're working with right now will remain consistent as we move to the business case. That could change, obviously, as we refine our work, and the final budget could go up or down. But the estimates that we were working with and that we negotiated the federal government on their cost share contributions, did occur during the COVID period. They're obviously pre-storms, but they do include a healthy contingency, and they do include forecasts for what materials and construction will cost through the life of the project. Jennifer, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, nothing to add, Kevin. I think that's a thorough answer. I agree. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as a member of the tax-paying public, I have seen some significant cost escalators on other big projects like the North Shore sewage treatment facility up there. So I really sincerely hope that you don't get caught in the same conundrum that Metro was caught in with the unexpected cost increase. So thank you for doing your best to bring this to Langley. We're all looking forward to it.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you all for coming today. It's very much appreciated to give us an update. I did have 4 questions, so I'm going to start, I guess, at the higher level of this, and I hope I'm articulating this in a way that you'll understand what my inquiry is. So, in looking at some of the renderings and having seen some of the developments that have taken place with SkyTrain, I'm wondering if there's any special consideration for air rights. I'm trying to understand at an abstract level how this works when suddenly you've got, development on the ground and private property ownership, but then you have this opportunity to build up. So I don't know if there's anything specific that comes along with the formula having to do with that and SkyTrain. That's my first question.
Did you want us to answer that one first?
No, I'll ask them all. The second one was just to put a plug in for washrooms at the stations. As you may be aware, there was rather robust conversation here having to do with what we received at Carvalth, and it may be just standard that at all SkyTrain stations you do have them, but I just want to ensure that that's actually going to happen, and there'll be quite a number of them so that people won't be inconvenienced. I had a couple of questions related most likely to COVID-19, and so I just wondered what the strategy was. I know that there had been implementation of some studies and research about copper infrastructure so as to avoid, people the virus being spread on a public transit, and also then the ventilation upgrades. I think, with COVID, we've understood a bit more how critical that is. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I can start and then turn it over to some of the subject matter experts here. With respect to air rights, the province's intention is to work closely with the township and your zoning bylaw and the types of densities and density bonusing, whether it's air rights or something else that is available, through your zoning bylaw to be able to deliver the type of development that you and your community are envisioning through here. But certainly it's something that we would be interested in if there's an interest from the township. Shannon Price is our lead on real estate on this project, and I asked Shannon to provide any additional comments on that.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, sure. The air parcel rights, I think there's 2 considerations. One is the engineering impacts on the over and above the SkyTrain. And I can leave that to Jennifer to dive a little more into the technical on that, but it becomes quite an expensive endeavor to plan for that type of engineering if we actually don't have overhead development in our sites. And the great thing about that we're finding with Surrey Langley corridor is the ability to build adjacent to the site, to the stations themselves. So it's not kind of like that Broadway subway dense urban fabric where you really do need to see development over top of stations, where in this case, we have opportunity adjacent to and have made considerations on the station development to facilitate that.
With respect to your question about washrooms and about COVID-proofing the system, the province has always been open and working with TransLink in providing space for washrooms on stations if desired. The challenge with washrooms, as you well know, is the operating costs and the security issues that can go along with them. So from the province's perspective, if washrooms are a requirement from TransLink, it's certainly something that we would pursue. But we do have Jeff Busby, a VP Engineering from TransLink, on the line who can comment on the desire for TransLink to provide washrooms in the system.
Sure, thanks, Kevin. So this is a popular request of ours to enhance the access to washrooms in our system. We don't provide these today except at a few locations. As you've heard, the challenge for TransLink is balancing the cost of maintaining the access to washrooms with the other cost pressures we have on running the system. So right now our approach is to work with folks like the province to make sure that there's provision for them in the stations, so that if that becomes a priority, we can make those available to our customers. We have some ongoing dialogue with our policymakers on whether they would like to prioritize that amongst other investments on the transit system. And just quickly on COVID measures, we are piloting a number of measures across our system to look at enhanced cleaning and including a pilot around copper, which is a material that has some antimicrobial properties. Those are still in pilot stages right now. And so once we have the findings for that, we'll be sharing that. And if there's any updates to our design standards, we'll be working with the province to see where it makes sense to incorporate them.
Similarly on ventilation, I believe, Jeff, was the last question from the councillor.
Yes, yeah, we've got a couple of pilots going on there, and we're just working through a new replacement for our rail fleet, and so we're looking intensely at what's the appropriate ventilation standard for those new vehicles.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Well, thank you so much for coming today and giving us an update. It's on one hand, it does seem far away. On other hands, it comes very close. So happy that you're here. I just had a question regarding the public engagement process. I think I heard you suggest that it was starting maybe as early as this spring. And I'm wondering if the public engagement process is something that's done in conjunction with our municipal staff here in the township and the way that we also do public engagement. And do you kind of work together, or is that a public engagement process that's completely separate and not partnering in any way with what we do?
Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, and thank you for the question. Yeah, our public engagement right now, we're planning our first event under the province in the spring of 2022. Normally, when we're producing materials, we review those with staff at the different municipalities, so they have a heads up and can give us some pointers on things we'd want to include and maybe things that the public is interested in. So we do share our materials ahead of time generally. And as I said, we work pretty closely with all three municipalities at the staff level. We're meeting every 2 weeks anyway, so we're usually pretty aware of what the concerns are.
Right, so I guess so the public has opportunity to speak to issues that matter to people that live in Langley and things that might be concerning to them specifically, not necessarily about the whole 16-kilometer line, but also to issues specific to Langley. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Some of the things that we'll be incorporating, we do incorporate into our public engagement sessions, are things like online surveys and specific questions that the public can answer that gives feedback on what the concerns are in their particular area of the alignment, rather than all being general. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And it is certainly very, very exciting to see that we've been waiting. I'm sure that folks all along the line have been waiting. I did want to say to you that it's going to be phased in two parts. One part to the Fleetwood, and then the second one over to Langley City. Has there ever been a thought of phasing it three ways? One stop in the Willowbrook, and then the next stop, next phase would be into Langley City. Any thought about that, if I may?
Thanks, Councillor. The team has reviewed the two-phase approach, so going to Fleetwood as one stage and then carrying on to Langley City, and then looking at an overall constructing in one shot going from King George all the way to Langley City. And what they found was that the most efficient way to deliver the project, both for schedule and for cost, is to deliver it as one project. So there'd be one continuous project going from King George Station all the way to Langley City. The more phases that it's broken up into increases the amount of costs and interaction between different contractors, and schedule and cost to go up. So the position at this time would be to construct it as one unified project all the way to Langley City.
No, I totally understand that. I didn't want to be wanting to ask that question, but okay. And my last thing is at the end of the line, at the Langley City, at their station, it would be the very last line. I understand they're thinking of putting some sort of a extended plaza or something different than just a stop. Is that the case? And if it is the case, how much would be Langley City's involvement, and how much would be your involvement, if that's the case? Thank you, if I may.
Turn that over to Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. At the end of the line, we've got 203 Street Station, which is our last station on the line. And the project is designing it as a SkyTrain station to make it accessible to all the transit users. We are working with the city of Langley to work on incorporating what their vision is of that area to make sure that we're accommodating for that. And they do have a vision that they're looking at right now that we are working with them. But the part that the project will be doing will just be the station and the guideway. So the things we're talking to them about is, for example, where to situate entrances and how people would be walking around the station and be able to get in based on their future vision there.
So if I may, just to supplement, any extra things or bells and whistles would be responsible of the city themselves?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. As a transit user for a few years going downtown Vancouver, I love taking the SkyTrain, so I'm really excited that it's coming to Langley. But one of the problems that I always had was if I didn't take the bus from Langley to Surrey at the King George station was finding parking. And that got more challenging as the years went by because there was more development around there. So people were parking all over the place. And I'm just trying to imagine what our parking situation is going to be like at the end of the line with, I know we've got Carvolth, and hopefully there'll be some rapid buses that are coming from Carvolth because that's, a really great parking lot. But everybody's going to want to get on that train right in that area, and we need to think about how that's going to impact our community for the parking aspect of it. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Jennifer, did you want to take that one?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for the question. Right now, there's no plan for a park and ride facility at the end of the line. We're working hard to meet our regional and provincial objectives for this project, which include improving all of our transportation networks, whether they're rapid transit or some of our modes of active transportation, and reducing the congestion and GHGs. So this particular $3.95 billion infrastructure investment is really focusing more on supporting improving local bus connections and bike and pedestrian routes into these new SkyTrain stations.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's
Okay,
always,
thank
yeah, always that first mile and last mile is the challenge with all transit systems all over the world, is getting folks to and away from the transit. It certainly is a challenge, and I know we do have the park and ride over at Carvolth, and hopefully that we'll all connect into it eventually, because in Langley Township, as you know, we're spread out. People use the transit system that are because of the densities in our area, the rural nature of our area, don't have good access to the bus infrastructure. So certainly something to always keep in mind is how we want as many people to get on it as possible. We want them to leave their vehicle here in Langley and ride the transit into other areas when they have to go. So thank you very much for your presentation and the update. I really do appreciate the willingness for you to come to our council to give us an update on this very huge project. It's going to take many years. We look forward to many more updates from you as we progress along. I know certainly want to thank the federal government for their contribution. I know we've had our MLAs, or MPs I should say, on both sides of the house in our area here, fighting for transit and fighting for a SkyTrain to the Langleys, and I really appreciate that. And our MLAs have been fighting hard for years to get that here. So I was there in 2014, and I know when I first got elected in 2011, rail wasn't even on the books for Langley. In 2014, the mayor's vision, it started to see a glimmer of hope, and here we are 8 years later, and it's in the planning stages and moving along quite nicely. So thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. And I'd like to extend our appreciation to township staff and to TransLink as well. It's been a collaborative partnership that is really working very well.
Great, thank you. Okay, I don't have any more questions, so appreciate you coming, and we'll carry on with our agenda. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we move on to reports to council, and 1E1 is the 2022 budget pre-approval request for Fleet, and they're itemized in the agenda. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Long moves it. Seconder. We have a second. Councillor Arneson seconds. Any discussion? Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as I raised in the special meeting for the budget earlier today, I'm a little concerned about replacing fleet vehicles right now because of the supply chain issues, which I think are significantly impacting the costs of the vehicles that are available out there right now for purchase. So I'm not going to support pre-approving this. I think we should squeeze another year out of this equipment and hope that the supply chain issues will resolve within the next year so that prices can start to return to a more favorable level for those who are purchasing the vehicles. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you. When it comes to some of this equipment, it's not all just pickup trucks. Like there's a mower replacement there, and anyhow, I don't have it in me, but that mower has an unbelievably a lot of hours on it, and there's like dump trucks. There's a backhoe there, 5,700 hours. You know, some of this equipment can be stretched, but I think what happens is, if, like, I support trying to scrimp and save, and I don't know if this is, well, that maybe is the wrong terminology, scrimp and save, but it was, like I can remember a couple of years ago, we took out, we prolonged some dump trucks. And there was a large amount of money. This is a large amount of money also, but some of this stuff, half of it, I would say, is equipment that's on the back of a tractor, a mower. Like some of that stuff can be a pile of junk. And it's hard to, when it comes to replacement costs. So if there is any way they can look at it and get another year out of it, I have no issues that way, but I think I'm going to support it simply because it can take 14 to 18 months right now. It can maybe be longer than that. And if some of this stuff is wore out, is on our books, we also participate in a program. Maybe Mr. Ravensteffi could comment about the equipment that we send out on the job and how it lines up to how efficient we can be with it. And I don't know if I need, that's just more of a comment. So I don't have a second look at it, but I think that maybe some of this equipment, because I operate a lot of equipment that's absolutely wore out and sometimes it's inefficient. Not always pickup trucks, but with some of this equipment. Thank you.
Thank you. Senior pickup truck, Councillor Davis. Councillor Whitmarsh. Now I have? Councillor Woodward. Yeah, I don't know. I saw the one and I wasn't sure about the other. Go ahead, Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me, but I appreciate that. I just wanted to know what the reason, I mean, I know there's logic in there about supply chain issues and wanting to get going on this for the 2022 requisitions, but I don't actually want to pre-approve it. I would like to consider it, given the budget's a few weeks away, just consider it with the budget. So I didn't see that, given that the budget process is kind of winding down, I didn't see the compelling nature of the pre-approval like maybe I would have 4 or 5 months ago. So I gotta get maybe some more details on why it may be important before I move to refer it to the budget process.
Sure. I think Mr. Seffi has some comments. I think it might be because by the time the budget is approved, we're into like April or May, but that may have an effect. Mr. Seffi, if you could explain the timeline and why it's important to come now.
Thank you, Your Worship. You have referenced one of those reasons, Your Worship, in terms of the timing and the timelines. Despite the optimism that some might have, it is quite likely that it would be more prolonged, that it being the budget approval process, more prolonged than a few weeks. So that was part of the reason. The main reason, I guess, is outlined in the report and has been referenced by members of council in terms of the supply chain issues in the context of COVID. And I guess, Your Worship, I would go on to say that ultimately is also something that is worthy of note is the fact that there is existing accounts that we have established in terms of the fleet and equipment replacement account. The replacement account does not have an impact on the general revenue because, as I said, it's self-sufficient and self-funding. So with those I guess, aspects, those factors in mind, it is really a question of being able to place the orders as quickly as we possibly can. And that's why it's in front of council. Otherwise, as Councillor Woodward has referenced, it would have been part of the normal process anyway. And I can speak more if you so wish, Your Worship, in terms of I guess the need for replacement and how staff goes about doing that with a number of factors, including those that have been mentioned in terms of the age of the fleet or the vehicles or equipment. The mileage has been referenced. And the other part that's also worthy of mention, Your Worship, is the service history. So keeping in mind the fact that if a piece of equipment is under, so to speak, if it's not being utilized, it means two things. One, the staff resources that are required to operate that piece of machinery are also unable to undertake work, which then collectively means that the staff and the equipment is not available to provide the service that the public expects as per council direction. So those are the reasons that we bring forward requests for replacement, because ultimately, yes, it is a matter of managing risk. And can we guarantee that the equipment cannot last for another year? Well, no, there's no guarantee, because at the end of the day, this is machinery we're talking about. We're just doing our best guess based on, again, the mileage, the age, as well as the service records to provide as I guess, excellent of a public service as we possibly can.
Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, I had a couple more. I appreciate that. So Mr. Sefi touched on the reserve. I want to confirm that he's talking about the Public Works Equipment Replacement Reserve. The report referred to a equipment replacement reserve. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same one.
Mr. Sefi?
I just conferred quickly with Mrs. Roth, and they are the same, Your Worship.
They're the same. Okay, so it's got some, it's pretty healthy. Maybe while we're here on it, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Sefi referred to it as self-funding. I would like to know what that means. How is it self-funding?
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I didn't choose my words carefully. What I was trying to say was that it's part of our operating processes that we have. So and I think it was maybe alluded to as part of the budget discussions in terms of departments that are required to undertake work account for not just the time of the personnel, but also the time of the equipment, and then it's automatically charged. And then a portion of that goes toward the replacement fund. So it's part of and parcel of our operating budgets and accounts, how we set the money aside on a yearly basis to be able to replace the fleet without having to go to council and request more funding.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's helpful. I learned something there. So again, I appreciate that. I'll wait for the members of council maybe to see what they have to say. And I'll think about it. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, for me, this is expensive equipment, but it's important equipment, and there are risks associated with not having decent equipment, risks, potential harm potentially because of some of the equipment breakdowns, but also for unable to get jobs completed or do the work on time. We know that there's challenges in ordering equipment. We have a reserve that is fairly healthy for us to be able to replace the equipment. So it makes total sense to me that we pre-approve this now, order it, and get it on track as soon as we can so that we're able to continue doing the kind of good work that we need to do in our community. So I will absolutely be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
Yeah, I just had a question about the equipment that we're replacing. What happens to the older equipment? Do we sell it at an auction, or do we trade in so that our costs are lower? That was just a question I have.
Your Worship, yes to both the questions or both components of the question, the same question. We will attempt to generate as much of a replacement, I guess, replacing funds as possible, either through auctions or other means. The intent is to replenish the replacement account.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this motion today, this staff request for the fleet. And it's mostly because now is a good time to put your order at the beginning of the year for replacing equipment, mostly a vehicle, but also parts as well. Now's the time. That's one thing. Another time is safety is another thing, is that, we have staff. It's good for them to have safe operating equipment on a regular basis. Also, and I had the police tell me one time, the superintendent or some of the staff sergeants, he said, if we had an assigned vehicle per police person, we could make the things last 2, 3, even 5 years longer. But if they have different people driving it, it's a little bit more difficult on maintaining the vehicle and keeping it running. I mean, I got an old lawnmower that I use to keep it going. I use a bolt to keep it going. And then when I finish, stop it, I pull the bolt out. That's just me operating it. Obviously, you can't do something like that with a staff. You want to keep things working. You want to keep things safe. And you want to follow a policy that makes sense. So I'm going to support it. And I think it's a good thing for us to have our staff use. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just a quick follow-up on the point Councillor Kuntz raised. So this equipment that we're pre-ordering, the replacement, the vehicles that they're replacing, we're going to turn around and sell. So to other people through auction or whatever. So there is still usable life left in that equipment. If we're going to turn around and sell it to somebody else to use, we wouldn't sell unsafe equipment, would we?
I think you're correct there, Councillor Richter. I don't know if Mr. Seffi wants to comment, but I know there's a lot of factors that come into play when a piece of equipment reaches its end of its useful life. For us, being a municipality, that when a backhoe and a truck go out to a site, we can't have a breakdown and then all that cost of all that staff are sitting there, where if it's on my farm and it breaks down for a few days, we can survive. So I know these vehicles go to a variety of different uses after their life with us, but Mr. Seffi, do you have any comments on that?
You said it, Your Worship. Nothing to add to your comments. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I don't see any further questions, so I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed?
I'm opposed.
Councillor Richter is opposed. The motion carries. We move on to E2, and this is the appointment of the Chief and Deputy Chief Election Officers for the 2022 General Local Government Election that everyone here is looking forward to. So, moved by Councillor Davis. There's a seconder, Councillor Kuntz. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just had a question. How come Ms. Bauer, our township clerk, won't be running the election like she's done so very effectively and efficiently for many years now?
Yeah, Mr. Backen, I'll turn it over to you. We can all come up with all kinds of wild guesses. I'm sure Mr. Backen has a couple too.
No, thank you, Your Worship. I guess it's really a combination of up to 3 things, but the first thing is going to be time availability. I guess the second is perception, to ensure that there is historically concerns raised about staff's involvement, so we're trying to make sure that there is on the senior, I guess, elections team, no current members of staff. And the third is going to simply be the costing, as we try to actually work through that in the most cost-efficient manner, given the parameters of the election coming forth with COVID and other things. More specifically, not knowing what's going to be happening in October, we will need surplus staff available, perhaps not so much on the election front, but on the coordination front for things such as facilities and cleaning and those sorts of things to oversee and arrange for those.
Okay, and just a follow-up on that. Ms. Foxgord, who's going to be the chief election officer, I know Mr. Wilson has extensive prior experience as a consultant on our elections, but has Ms. Foxgord had direct municipal election experience?
correct, but compared to Mr. Wilson, who is a bit of a legend in the area, it would be considered modest. She has acted previously in some very modest election roles. Her experience is actually that of a tax collector, and that skill set actually works well in dealing with the public on the passionate and emotional side of election issues.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I don't see any further questions, so I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. We zip down to H, bylaws for consideration at third reading. There's H1, official community plan amendment and rezoning application number 100152, and development permit applications number 100931, and bylaw number 5739, 5740, 5754. If I could have a motion, third reading. Councillor Whitmarsh moves it. Councillor Davis seconds. Is there any discussion? Councillor Richter.
Yes, this is for 220 rental units and 20 townhouse units. And I note from the diagrams presented on pages 55 as well as 80 that they have flat roofs. And we've had a prior rental complex come to council where we talked about having the building solar panel ready going forward for future hydro needs. Is that something we can require of this development?
Mr. Seffi?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, if that's the case, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make an amendment to the motion that the buildings be solar panel ready.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll wait for further discussion to bring that forward.
Sure, thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a question regarding the 20-year restriction on the rentals. What's the policy basis for 20 years?
Mr. Seffi?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I would say there is no formal policy, Your Worship. The policy in this case is based on past practice, as is often the case whenever there is no explicit direction or no explicit policy. What staff uses is past practice, what has been approved, what has been used in other municipalities, essentially what's best practice. And this generally varies from, I guess, in this particular case, in the case of a housing agreement that requires rental tenure for a period of time, it varies between, I guess, 20 to 25, or even 15 to 25, around that period. In terms of the requirement for an owner to ensure the building remains as a rental building. So in this case, it is something that has been approved by council in the past, so staffs use that as a bit of a guide.
Yeah, so I'm going to specifically ask about the additional 24 units. Has there been any consideration given to potentially requesting a long period of time for those?
Your Worship, the rental agreement, the housing agreement for the rental tenure of the buildings is based on all of the buildings, all of the apartment buildings, not the townhouse units, obviously. The apartment units will all be subject to the housing agreement, which will be 20 years. As far as the additional units are concerned of 24, I guess the justification is I guess several factors, several matters have gone into the consideration. One was initially when the application was made, the proposal did not include rental. So that, at least in the eyes of the proponent and staff, certainly agreed that making it a rental building would be a benefit to the community as a whole. So that is something the applicant considered and put forward as part of the discussions about the OCP amendment to increase the density. The other aspect, Your Worship, is the configuration. I will try when I've stopped talking, because I can't multitask, Your Worship, show council the schematics of the designation versus the proposal. And what that shows is that the proposed OCP amendment modifies slightly the designation from, I guess, the multi-designation that there was to be the same multi-designation, with the exception that the apartment designation is slightly enlarged, expanded. That in itself resulted in the 24 units, which then resulted in the applicant being able to offer the entire building as rental, as well as be able to address a couple of issues. One was a bit of a better transition, if you will, to the existing uses in the area. The streetscape and the interface was certainly believed to be a superior one with this OCP amendment. The other one was the provision of a pocket park, which again was not possible potentially unless there was the OCP amendment that recognized the possibility, the potential for an increase in density. And ultimately the compliance with the OCP policy of the township in terms of the CAC contribution, which for the incremental increase in the number of units goes to 3 times the CACs that would be otherwise applicable to all regular rezoning applications.
Okay, I'm gonna follow up on that. I think that's helpful. I think maybe you might want to see that information for all of council, if other members of council are interested in that, and I can resume my questions after that.
Sure.
Thank you.
While he's doing that, maybe I'll go to Councillor Ferguson and then come back.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to conclude. I just don't want to lose this an opportunity to speak.
Oh,
That.
Let me get it up. No, you
All right, thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
All I've done is ask questions.
I know. I thought Councillor Ferguson, while this is up, he can ask this question. It might be helpful for Mr. Seffi, and then I'll come right back to Councillor Woodward.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Really simple is now, as pointed out earlier on by another councillor about the flat roof and the potential for solar panel ready. Is that our policy when folks come in and talk to us, staff, that's what we're asking for? If they have a flat roof, make it available for solar roofing, if I may, solar panels.
Mr. Seffi?
Your Worship, that is not a requirement of our subdivision development servicing bylaw. So it's really a matter for council to raise as council sees fit in terms of going forward. Whether council wishes to have these on an ongoing basis, I would suggest that a direction from council, a resolution of council would be the best approach, Your Worship. And this is the map that I was referring to, Your Worship, earlier.
Okay,
so
thank you.
If you can take a look at the subject site. Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, did I interrupt? No. As you can see, Your Worship, the light yellow or the sort of the mustard line, the color shows the townhouse designation, and the brown shows the apartment, the high density residential designation. And this is on the left side. You see what the current Carval plan contemplated. And on the right side, you see what the applicant has proposed, which is just a slight modification of, turning the townhouse, orienting the townhouses to the south as opposed to the north, because as you can see to the north, we have a similar use in terms of the apartments and the high density residential. So this brown fits better to the north as opposed to the south. And then by doing so, the area has increased somewhat. I think it's in the region of about 3,000 square meters in terms of the area, that then translates on an FSR basis to 24 units.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodward, carry on. Questions you want to carry on with?
Yeah, thanks. So what I wanted to get clarified there then was if bring Mr. Seffi's attention to page 41 of H1, and councils as well, of course. Paragraph 3 there. The reason I was referring to and wasn't mentioning the townhouses is there, it specifically says resulting in 24 additional units for the apartment portion of the site. So that's what I was focusing on. Is it inaccurate sort of just to consider it there that for an additional 24 units, there's been an agreement to make them all rentals for a period of 20 years? Is that fair to say?
That is fair, Your Worship, but that's not the only consideration. As I said earlier, the interface, the paragraph that Councillor Woodward referenced, talks about this being a positive in terms of the interface, as well as the contribution towards the CACs.
I just want to confirm, I haven't characterized it as a positive or a negative. I'm just currently asking a couple of questions to clarify. What I'm wondering is where this 20 years came from. So in terms of past practice for additional density of 24 units, what I'm beginning to question on some of these here is paragraph 4. Staff do not object to the proposed additional density. Well, I'm not objecting to the proposed additional density either. But what I feel is missing from paragraph 4 is the word temporary. We're creating additional rental housing opportunities, increasing the township rental housing stock group. We're only doing that for 20 years, even though we're adding additional density. The CAC program amounts for additional apartments are pretty low given the market value of some of these apartments now. It's not affordable for many, many people. And while it is rental, it is only there for some period of time. So what starts to happen when Willoughby is built out and these covenants start to expire? This will revert back to market housing then to be sold. I just want to confirm that that's what the agreement allows them to do.
Mr. Sefi?
Your Worship, then there will be additional requirements that might kick in at that time. But the fact is that the housing agreement that binds the owner to retention of the buildings for rental purposes then essentially goes away. So there's no further obligation, but then there may be other I guess, applicable regulations at that point that might kick in.
What would those be? I'm not sure what that, not following
Well,
that.
sorry, I didn't know specifically. I'm just saying that, it is not necessarily going to be allowed to continue on the same basis. This just ensures that it's done for 20 years. It doesn't preclude the possibility or exclude or include the possibility.
Okay, so what you're meaning, I'm trying to interpret that. So what you're saying is, of course, they could continue as rental units, but they're not required to be so?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I guess, I'm kind of planning for the worst, hoping for the best, right? So that presumably if someone has hundreds of units of market housing that they've waited 20 years, potentially they might start selling those as market housing. There's of course no way to know that for sure, that what somebody may or may not do, but there'd be no way to prevent them from doing that. Would that be fair?
That's correct, yes.
That's what he said.
Okay, so in that case, I'll maybe we'll hear from other members of council if we have other motions, and I'll consider this. I don't know if there's anything else that staff want to raise in terms of, is there some way or discussion about internally about what starts to happen if our rental stock is all secured by 20-year covenants and these covenants start to expire, what starts to happen to our Willoughby neighborhoods? Is there any internal documents or discussion on the potential risk of these covenants, even when we're handing out additional density for them?
Mr. Sefi, do you have any?
Your Worship, the only thing I can just reiterate, I guess, not state, is the fact that this is the kind of timeline that's been used in the past. That's all I can add.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to distinguish before I can carry on that would be me focusing purely on the additional units, not on the ones that are within the scope of the designation. Some concern about essentially, to me, in the life of real estate, 20 years isn't very long. And so some concern here about us continuing to do this for additional density. The benefit accrues very significantly to the developer and not necessarily to the community, which can be fine in a lot of cases. Nothing wrong with housing for profit, but additional density for the CAC program for a restrictive covenant is something that I'd like to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Richter.
Are you ready for me to make an amendment motion, Mr. Mayor? Then I'd like to, okay, thank you. Then the original report that came to council, which is on pages, which starts on H1, page 29. So on page 31, I'd like to add a condition, number 16, that the apartment complex be constructed as solar panel ready, with the possibility of solar panel ready being done for the townhouse units as well.
Okay. The amendment, is there a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Arneson seconds it. I'll open discussion to the amendment, or if you wish to speak to it first, Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just think that we've heard from in previous applications that, the ability to convert to solar panel or to convert to solar panel is becoming easier and cheaper. But it's only going to be easier and cheaper if these buildings, these larger buildings, have been constructed in the first place to be solar panel ready. So it's not requiring them to convert to solar panel ready, although I'm sure the business case will be there downstream for them to do that. But it's to make sure that they can do that when the opportunity presents itself. So that's why I want to add this condition. And we did add it, I believe, for a couple of other applications that we've had come through. I appreciate the comment about maybe we need to convert this into a policy going forward for staff to consider for all other applications. And I think maybe we should develop a policy, but until we have that policy in place, I want to make sure that these higher density units in particular do have that solar panel capability going forward.
Great, thank you. Quick question for staff, for Mr. Seffi. So just so I'm clear on kind of what solar panel ready is that running conduit to the roof and ensuring that there's so it's really not too hard a project for a builder to just run some conduit. Is there any strengthening of the roof that has to be done, or would roofs be able to handle that?
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess it's arguable as to whether there's a hardship or not. I guess a developer or a builder might argue anything is potentially a hardship. But that said, Your Worship, that is exactly what you have described, or that's how it would be identified as if you will, roughing it in for a future use of solar panels on the roof, so that there's no internal renovations or remodifications necessary, but the running of the pipes. So it's not as big of a cost burden as not having it ready. And if I could, Your Worship, since I've got the microphone, just very quickly going back to the questions that were raised again previously by Councillor Woodward, I've just been advised by staff that even though these units are not being proposed as affordable, there is a bit of a policy framework that staff have also looked at, which again does not relate to a rental building that is not affordable, but only to those that are affordable. Having said that, that policy specifically provides for a 20-year housing agreement. So that was, I guess, looked at and kind of informed the decision beyond what I said as in terms of practice. The other part is the fact that converting the building from a rental to a strata, if you will, does require council's approval in 20 years. So that's what I was trying to get at earlier in terms of, yes, it kind of ends the obligation, but there are other layers of approval that would be necessary in 20 years, regardless of which way the applicant wishes to go, or the owners at that time wish to go.
Okay, thank you. We'll carry on with this amendment, and then if there's any further questions to what you've just said, we'll entertain them after we've disposed of the amendment, one way or the other. Councillor Long on the amendment.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the solar panel thing, because that's what we're discussing right now. So, yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that we're not increasing the cost of construction that's going to, negate it being an affordable rental unit either. So I don't know, and I think you asked the question, so maybe we could have more information. We're sure that this is not going to increase the cost to the construction. What qualifications do we? So when we say solar ready, what are the qualifications that we put out? The specifications, let's say. So it sounds good, but I think we probably should develop some kind of a specification sheet that says, okay, when you go to solar ready, this is what we expect you to do. Because does that mean you put the electrical wire in and the conduit and the mounting brackets and, rearrange the drainage? I mean, there could be a lot of factors. I would like to see, this initiative followed, because who wouldn't? Everyone likes solar energy, I suppose, but it may be prohibitive or it may be complicated. And I wonder if it should be dropped in at this late stage of the game. So maybe, Worship, can you help? How can we pass this? But if there's a problem with the developer, we should have maybe a second chat about it. But also, we should follow up, if this passes, to developing a policy that we can apply to all flat roofed, well, it wouldn't have to be a flat roof building, It could be any building. I don't know how, now that it's been modified to include townhouses, whether that's going to be an issue. So more questions than answers, more flags.
Mr. Sefi, do you have any comments on potential cost, or have you your experience in other buildings in the township?
Thank you, Your Worship. As you will recall, Your Worship, just a few minutes ago, I was very cautious to say that it is minimal in relation with other costs. And in terms of the policy objective, I understand it to be from council to make it a requirement going forward, because once that requirement has been made, the actual specifics of how it is going to be implemented is actually covered in the BC Building Code and our building bylaw. So there are provisions, there are requirements as to how that is done and how that is achieved. The question is one of threshold as to whether a developer is actually required to make that happen or not, which is actually beyond our ability as a local government, because there are, again, part of the building bylaw, it is beyond our ability to require, unless it is part of a rezoning application, in which case council has full authority to include.
And follow up, Your Worship. Now that townhouses have been added, I can't really look on the map here to see what the orientation is of the roofs on those townhouses, where they would be. Are they flat roofed as well then? I guess flat roofs means you can put the panels facing south, no matter what. But if it's a peaked roof, well, you might have a problem there if you're facing west or something. Can staff comment on the townhouses? Because that's what's in the motion.
Mr. Sefi?
Your Worship, I'm trying to get the map on the screen again so council can see. I don't think I'm sharing my screen, am I?
No, it's not.
It doesn't seem like it.
Oh, they look like flat roofs.
Your screen.
There we go.
So, Your Worship, this is the orientation of the apartment buildings. Let me just see which direction I need to go. I think I need to go backwards. So it appears the townhouses do have flat roofs as well, Your Worship, based on this rendering right here. At least somewhat flat roofs, maybe not completely flat, but not the typical, pitched roofs that we often see with single family.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And just further to the overall conversation, I just wanted to point out that the relative affordability of something like this is really at the advance of the construction. And I'm understanding what Mr. Safi is saying, that we can't go beyond our regulatory ability to advance certain things beyond the BC Building Code. However, I'm very much in support of a policy, because what I'd like to point out is if you're solar ready and that you put that infrastructure up there, people will eventually get the benefit from an energy cost reduction point of view, which will help with the affordability. Not only that, we do have a climate action strategy, and I know that we all know that. But every time we look at a project like this and miss an opportunity to add a component to this development, they are putting in more density, which is, great. It's a limited amount of time in which there will be a rental. We can also work on a policy that's maybe more robust than that. But I really think that we'd be missing the boat here if we didn't get that to happen, because the alternative is just to let it languish and continue to allow people to, go with whatever they've got built into their building, which sadly is not really meeting our energy goals at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to clear up the idea of this cost of construction affecting its status in affordable unit. These are not affordable units. So I just wanted to clarify that. If there's confusion about that from anyone on council, this is not an affordable construction project. These are not affordable units. So any sort of issues of increasing the cost of construction does not affect their affordability. Thanks.
Thanks. They're market rent. Yeah, thanks.
Your Worship, may I just add another point in terms of the townhouses? I did reference to council that that they appear to have flat roofs. Looking at the report, Your Worship, on page 43 H1, I see that the applicant is proposing patio areas on the roof, so they are essentially flat on the townhouse side. However, the fact that the patio or patios are being proposed may preclude the possibility of solar panels.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I recall, the amendment that I put forward was solar panel ready for the apartments, for the apartment buildings, with possible solar panel ready for the townhouses. Because I wasn't sure if that is feasible at this stage for townhouses. We know it's feasible for the larger apartment blocks.
Yeah, that's in the motion. Yes, thanks for clarifying.
Well, could they read the motion back, maybe?
Sure, but I know I've made notes. You did say possible townhouse also.
Yeah.
So we'll get the motion read back once we're ready for the question, if that's okay. Oh, Councillor Woodward took his hand down. Okay, read the motion back. The amendment, I should say.
Thank you, Your Worship. That another condition be added to the OCP amendment and rezoning application number 100152, that be constructed as solar panel ready for the apartment buildings, with possibly including the townhouse units as well.
Including in the townhouse, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so that's the amendment. I'm going to call the
Well,
question.
yeah, I just want to make sure, though, that what we're saying here, the possibility of solar panel ready is just for the 20 townhouse units.
That's right. So
the requirement to be solar panel ready is for the apartment blocks.
That's what I understand. Mr. Seffi, does that motion give you sufficient direction?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will now call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? And opposed? Councillor Long opposed, it carries. Thank you. So we're back to the main motion as amended. And is there any further? Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. So I think I'm gonna contemplate a referral back to staff, because I don't want to try to come up with a specific year, but I wanted to address some of the Mr. Seffi's latest comments just for clarification. In the Township of Langley housing agreement specific to this proposal, it contemplates stratification. So if they're stratified, they would not be needing to come back to council to get stratification. So with townhouses as a component, presumably there's one strata corporation for the entire project, including individual stratification for each apartment. So why would the housing agreement contemplate stratification if they're not stratifying?
Your Worship, I apologize if I didn't make my points very clear. First of all, Councillor Woodward is right. This is not an affordable proposal, an affordable rental proposal. It is simply a rental proposal. The second part is the housing agreement ensures that the rental tenure remains for 20 years. It does not contemplate a stratification prior to 20 years. What the housing agreement generally does is that it makes it a requirement, and if at the end of the 20 years the applicant, the owners, wish to stratify, they would have to approach council and apply for modifications, and I don't know if they would actually be bylaw modification, but certainly the council approval would be required to change that tenure to allow for stratification in 20 years.
Well, I think that this is the crux of it here, Mr. Mayor, because they can stratify now as part of the completion of the final inspection. So they can stratify now and register a restricted covenant on every single individual apartment unit. And then in 20 years, those expire, they file to remove them with land title and they sell the unit. There's no visitation back to council for approval of that. So, I mean, why would anyone not stratify now when they'd be subject to the current building code? Then, you know, because coming back in 20 years to stratify would be nearly impossible, not because of council approval, but because of potential changes to the BC building code, which the building cannot be altered to satisfy. So why would anyone not? So I'm assuming they're stratifying, and why why would the agreement even contemplates that?
Your Worship,
yeah.
I apologize, Councillor Woodward. Just to clarify, the stratification that's being contemplated is not for individual units, but rather two separate buildings.
Is that somewhere confirmed inside the staff report that I have missed?
I don't know if it's in the staff report, but it's certainly in the housing agreement.
Okay, I was looking for that and could not find it because I agree that that's sufficient protection. So do we need them? But I don't want to restrict somebody if they have market rental housing or market. I don't really want to restrict them to maybe sell those. I'm only focused on the additional density. So why wouldn't we want them stratifying now, but then holding on to a longer period of time for that additional density?
Well, again, Your Worship, this is obviously subject to Council's direction, but staff believed that rental generally would be a public benefit. I don't know if it would be categorized as an amenity, but certainly a benefit to provide rental opportunities as opposed to market stratification, more strata units, because of the fact that we aim, as you know, as Council is aware, as part of the Housing Action Plan, to provide a variety of housing forms and housing types. And certainly we have heard loud and clear that there is a potential challenge with appropriate and appropriately located rental units. So that said, if Council wishes to impose a requirement that may not be quite explicitly laid out, we can add that as a condition, and then staff would make sure that it's included in the housing agreement. But the intent, if it's not explicit, has always been to ensure that the units are rental units for at least 20 years.
Okay, so I think, so there's just Mr. Mayor, these comments are for Council. I think there's a philosophical challenge here in that rental housing for the sake of rental housing is being seen to have a public benefit. I'm not sure that a rental unit that's renting for $2 per foot per month with the vacancy rates that we're seeing is of any more public benefit than market housing. So there is a disconnect, I think, that's starting to happen, at least with me. I'll speak for myself, in terms of some of the policies that are producing outcomes of rental housing that's not affordable, smaller and smaller units, over and above maybe market housing, that the rents are beginning to outpace. And so that, I think, is a core problem. And when you grant someone additional density for, I think, very little in return, given that they're going to be renting them out for the gross rents that I mentioned, not affordable by very many people. What is the public benefit of that? It's very, very, very limited, given the way the market has gone in the last few years here. And so if there's no other comments, I will make a motion to refer this back to staff.
Okay, go ahead and make the motion.
Yep. Refer back to staff to work with the proponent to increase the time period for the proposed restriction of rental of the additional 24 apartment units. So move.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that,
Mr.
Mr. Mayor.
Richter seconds. Discussion on, or you've spoken a lot, but you
I know,
have
I've
an
spoken
opportunity to speak
enough
to the referral if you wish.
No, I don't need to.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion on the referral? Okay, it's on referrals to staff. Just see Councillor Davis. I know you can't see everybody here. Okay, Councillor Davis, go ahead.
So, will there be a time frame for this? Because this is like, how long of a time for this third reading?
Yeah. So, Mr. Seffi, if this referral passes, when would you expect to be back to council with third reading?
Your Worship, I would imagine the intent inherent in the application or the motion, I didn't write it down, unfortunately. I trust the clerk did, but I understand there was an intent to have a discussion with the applicant. And really the question is, is the applicant on board with extending it, and then to what extent extending it? So I don't know if the answer is something that might be, approved by council and also acceptable to the applicant, then it could be very quick. It could be within a matter of weeks, even as early as the next council meeting, because I think the next council meeting is actually a couple of weeks away. But if it's something that might be a point of some discussion and negotiation and going back and forth, it could be certainly longer than that.
Okay, just another question maybe to the mover. Is the intent just so that this sticks with this one report, or is this to expand into other reports and into policy?
No, so this, I think I can answer that. The referral motion is to do with this particular H1.
But
yeah, and as I understand it, it is the additional 24 units, not the entire units. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Maybe you could read the motion out so it's clear, or the referral motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. The referral moment is for staff to work with the proponent to increase the time period for the rental apartments that are rented for longer than a 20-year period.
But I understand the mover maybe has to clarify. I understand he said the additional 24 units only. Councillor Woodward? Or?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Yeah.
It's to refer to staff to increase the tenure of the rental accommodation for the 24 units.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. So it's only on this report, Councillor Davis.
Okay.
No.
So if it's just on this unit, on this, I thought it was 20 years. You said 10 years?
No, so it's to increase that 20 to a larger number, but just for the 24 units.
Okay.
I think 10-year is mentioned, but a different spelling.
We did a lot of talking, but my question, I guess maybe it's an unfair question to Councillor Richter or Councillor Woodward's. Is this something that we may see every time we have a? But you know what? We'll deal with that when the time comes, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Thank you.
Refers to this.
Yeah, it sticks to this. Thanks.
Yes. Councillor Long?
Yeah, well, I'm never really in favor with mucky at the last minute. I mean, these rules should have been put in place earlier. So here we are at third reading. We had a pretty good public hearing. It's a good project, in my opinion. We're going to encumber them with having to do extra construction work for the solar panels. I think that was wrong as well, because this last minute stuff is just not the way we should be doing business. So perhaps it would be, in my mind, I would see this could be a policy that we could explore at a CPC for future developments, find out what the ramifications are. Are we talking 25, 30 years, 40 years? What is the number and what is the reason for it? So those are the kinds of discussions I think we should be pursuing as a council. But when an application is before us, all the work's been done, all the public hearings have happened, everything's been done, then we pop extra requirements at the last minute. I don't think that's the way to do business.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, before I ask my question, I understand that according to my vote, that it was 8-1 for the amendment and Councillor Long supported it. Anyway, my question is for the housing agreement that was mentioned by Councillor Woodward. Did he also want to see that as well? Because it's on page 27, but it only says that the person has seen it, but we're not really seeing it as well. So that's my question to Councillor Woodward,
sorry,
if I may, through the chair.
What was the question?
The actual housing agreement between the applicant and the Township of Langley.
Okay, so this is a referral motion back to staff to review all of that. So,
that's part of the review as well?
Well, it would be. It would be.
Okay, well, that's part of the review. Yeah. That's the only thing at this point in time I'd like to see. I do appreciate the comments, so thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe I will clarify a few things. I mean, I just want to focus everyone's, this is in regards to the additional density being requested as part of the OCP amendment. So, what is wrong with the corporation of the Township of Langley? It's a Corefield Suffolk issue for looking for something more, to me, very small concession for an additional almost 25 units of significant value to the land. So if you have a land and you have, just pick numbers, 200 units designated for that, and now you get 225. Well, you didn't pay the landowner for the 25. So there's all kinds of issues around additional density that I think we need to start looking at. And so I'm not focused on the designation density, I'm focused on the additional density. And I think it's good to start making a point about the issue with these rental restrictions. We're not creating rental stock, we're creating temporary rental stock. And I think that it's important to start highlighting that. And when it's an additional density, I see no problem with some, what is it called again? Mucky muck or something. I'm not quite clear what that means. But what's wrong with council starting to have a discussion about what is that additional 24 units going to be for? And I view that as my role. I view that as very clearly my role here on council, to bring ideas to the council table, specific in regards to that additional density. That I don't see that as a problem. I didn't know about this application until a few months ago. I was requesting the additional density. There's no time to go to CPC. There's no time to sign a policy and have Councillor Long debate it for a year.
Okay, let's keep it to the motion, please. Excuse me, let's keep it to the motion,
I am speaking
please.
to the speaking to the referral, Mr. Mayor.
Council Long,
It's a very
please.
constant issue
No,
that comes up
yeah,
every council.
Council Long, just stay to the motion as we always do.
I am
Just keep
speaking to the
eyes
motion,
open. Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, so I understand you don't like the comments.
Okay,
It's fine.
hey, Council Long, please. Councilor Woodward, if you just refer to the motion and.
Yeah, I appreciate you not allowing the interruptions to continue. So what I would like to just highlight again is that this is in regards to the additional density being granted, which has significant value to the development. And the value to the community is limited when it's market-based rental housing that of so many people I talk to in the community simply cannot afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Richter?
Yeah, I think what this is getting to the heart of is we know that a lot of these applications that come forward ask for OCP amendments, many of them to get additional density. But what does the community benefit from that additional density in the long run? And in this particular application's case, they're getting 24 more units. And it's market value units. But the argument can still be made that it's the rental capacity. Now, the additional 24 should be rental units for longer than 20 years, because that will be part of the housing stock in the community 20 years from now that will be considered within the realm of affordability. So Patrick Condon, who we all know from UBC, just recently wrote a paper in which he said, this is happening far too often. We're giving density away and we're not getting social value or social good back for that density. So I support Councillor Woodward's referral. I think staff need to have a discussion with the developer about whether they would be willing to put those 24 units in, quote, rental hold for 50 years, because that makes more sense to me for these 24 units that they're getting the additional density for.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
So I agree in a lot of ways with Councillor Woodward, but I can't support it today because we didn't do this at first and second. So somehow we're waiting until third and like, this is a great discussion to have, but like, let's continue the discussion. But today I'm not going to support it just because it feels like it's right at the last minute, which I don't think is fair. And if we want people to develop market housing, we need housing, whether it's, you know, I would love to have more affordable housing and we can have a discussion about that. But the fact is, if we don't have housing, whether it's market housing, we're still going to have less and less housing for people who need to buy the housing that they can't actually, you know, maybe they have to rent. But we still need those kinds of units in our township. And, you know, let's have that discussion. But we want developers to want to build in our community and want to build market rentals. And, you know, I guess at this stage in the game, I feel like we're just doing this at the last minute. And I just don't think that's fair. And it's not fair to people who want to, you know, come here and you know, anyway, yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, no, and I'm sensitive to that, Councillor Kunst. I just don't know when the right time ever is, because third reading, if you do it at first and second, we're told we got to wait for public input. We're told we got to, you know, hear from the public, which I agree with. And then at third, we're always told it's last second. So there never is a right time, I suppose. I think that, you know, that it's important that we start looking at quality development, not just development, that if people want to come here and build market housing, I can't think of a municipality that approves more development, other than maybe Surrey, as fast as we do. I don't recall very many projects at all getting voted down at the Township Council tables. I can't think of many municipalities with the volume of development that we're processing with the fewest and least amount of issues at the council table, at least as I see it. On this one, I think I'm going to reiterate again that it's additional density. So you can't build your way out of a housing crisis. And philosophically, we seem to be hearing a lot of that here these days, that we're somehow going to build faster, build more, and this is all going to end. It's not going to end unless you start to have of this variety of housing stock. And if it's all going to start expiring in 20 years, then we're not actually building much of anything other than market housing while pretending to do otherwise. And I would like to see, I'm not asking for it to even be made permanent to rental housing. I'm asking for a slightly longer period of time while we start to work out some of the items in the housing action plan to deal with this over the long run. An extra some period of time doesn't seem like a lot to ask for what are going to end up as 24 market housing units in addition to the designated density. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I think certainly in the long run, I do support the idea of looking at this more intently. We do need to expand our rental housing. We need to have a much greater and bigger pool of rental housing available in our community. I on this one today, I probably will support the referral. I don't like it. It feels a little bit late in the game, but on the other hand, it is the extra units. We're not asking for more money, but we are asking for them to just allow them to keep them as rental units for a longer period of time. So I'm going to support it on this occasion, but certainly as we move forward, I do want to see this be a regular long-term solution to this as opposed to case-by-case kind of solution. So I will support it for today.
Thank you. All right, on the referral, I'll call the question. All those in favor and opposed? Mayor Froese, Councillor Kunst, Councillor Long. It carries. So now we move on to correspondence. Is one item of correspondence. Just motion to receive, please. Councillor Ferguson moves receipt. Councillor Davis seconds. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Minutes of committees. We got the Heritage Advisory January 5th, the Recreation, Culture and Parks on January 12th, and council process on January the 17th. Could I have a motion to adopt the minutes of council process and receive the other ones? Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Davis seconds. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. K2 is Councillor Long.
So we received another question.
Go ahead. We've adopted the.
Yeah, they've been adopted. Okay, so and then there was a mention in the Recreation, Culture and Parks due to the letter or something from somebody about youth facilities. And I think I'm trying to find it here, but Councillor Richter suggested that maybe there would be a task force or something to look into recreation facilities for youth, seeing how this issue is to sort of come up. So did the commission or the committee form a task force to examine youth facilities in the township?
Does anybody answer that from staff?
It doesn't show in the minutes. I'm wondering if what they plan to do with that.
Councillor Richter, maybe as the chair, if you could, or the co-chair, if you could respond.
Well, actually, Councillor Woodward, I'll defer to him if he wishes to respond, but I certainly can clarify the question that was answered, or asked. I'll let Councillor Woodward speak as he was.
The comment was made by Councillor Richter.
Yeah, but Councillor Woodward was there as the chair. Councillor Woodward, go ahead. Thanks. You're muted.
No, in regards to the task force, I believe council permission is required to form a task force. And as of right now, the work plan for 2022 has not yet been adopted, to be discussed further in February.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, and I would like to add into that was the suggestion that I made based on the letter from Diane Kask that council had referred to the Parks and Rec Committee to deal with. And this issue of needing more youth activities, and it's not just in Aldergrove, I think it's across the board. We've certainly heard about it in Fort Langley. If that was an area of interest to the new committee, then they could add it to their work plan as a task force they'd like to form, because of course council has to approve their work plan. So nothing is formalized or finalized yet. It was just a suggestion that if they were interested, this was an area that they could look into.
Great, thank you. Okay, move on to K2, Council Process Committee recommended motion. Can I have a motion, please? Councilor Davis, seconder. A second. Councilor Kunst. Discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Woodward, are you opposed? Or just late?
No, obviously not, Mr. Mayor. But
Okay,
thank
I
you.
didn't think so. It was late. I have to clarify. It's unanimous. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. It is unanimous.
Yeah, thanks. All right, we'll go to the Mayor's report, Mayor and Council report. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for your patience. Given that the last meeting's Mayor's report was the year in review, I'm going to start with the events following the last meeting in December. Councilors Arneson, Ferguson, Kunst, Whitmarsh, Woodward, and I attended the Chamber Holiday Dinner meeting on December 14th. Dueling pianos performed for much of the evening, and it was an excellent night. And I know we cherish those times we can get together again as rules keep changing, and I think at that point we can still get together. On December 15th, Acting Mayor Kunst attended a photo op at the Derek AA Arboretum with the Arboretum and Botanical Society of Langley and Michael Chang to showcase the area in which a Korean garden will be planted surrounding the Gapyeong Stone. Councilors Kunst, Whitmarsh, and myself toured a movie set in South Aldergrove on December the 16th in the series. Oh, on Councilor Arneson. My apologies. The series the buildings bear a stunning resemblance to New York City, and I'm excited to see films that use that back lot when they show up on wherever, Netflix or whatever. But it's an amazing industry that we have in our own township. On January 12th, Councilors Ferguson, Kunst, Whitmarsh, and I toured the Aldergrove Community Station House at the Old Fire Hall in Aldergrove, a partnership between Langley Meals on Wheels, food organizations, and community partners, including the Township, School District, Poverty Reduction Committee, and not-for-profit agencies. The Station House provides support for children, youth, families, and seniors living with food security issues by offering accessible food services and support in a welcoming place. They also provide space for people to learn a new food skill or volunteer. We're grateful to have this wonderful place in our community to create opportunities for and empower people. On January the 18th was the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce Langley Leadership Panel, where our Member of Parliament, Tico Van Popta, our other Member of Parliament, John Aldag, our MLAs, Megan Dykeman and Andrew Mercier, Mayor Val Vandenbroek, and myself fielded questions from Chamber meeting members. And on January 21st, I participated in a call with Fraser Health regarding updates on the response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to discuss areas where we can work collectively to respond to the crisis. So that's my report. Councillor Davis, did you want to add something? We'll get Councillor Davis's mic on, please.
On January 14th, I attended the Vancouver Giants game at our beautiful Langley Event Center. Dale, the Giants coordinator, reached out to me to see if we could connect with some food producers from our community. The Giants have been honoring members of our community. Last month, it was the first responders, and this time it was farmers. We were able to connect with 6 food producers from our township, a beef producer, a veggie grower, a dairy and chicken farmer, a blueberry farmer, a doctor of veterinary medicine, and an educator of all things farming, and a lady who makes wine and mead from bees. These 6 farmers were invited along with the families to enjoy the Giants game. They were honored at the start of the game and even invited down to drop the puck. So thank you to Dale and the Vancouver Giants for all the snacks and pizzas and honoring food producers from the Township of Langley. It was a fun night. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, something to add?
Yeah, I wonder, I do have something to say regarding Metro Vancouver. Oh, and also, what else? I was actually, did a tour of the, anyway, it's, I'm going to go back to something else. Councillor Davis, was it Dr. Anderson, Albert Anderson dropped the puck? Okay, the interesting thing on Dr. Anderson, or Albert Anderson, is the fact that his grandkids actually not played that game. They actually play in the WHL. So it's a small world from there, and it gives you an idea from that situation. On the Metro Vancouver, I had a meeting with the Liquid Waste Committee, and we're very, very busy, as you know, in the particular areas of liquid waste and the improvements made to both our Langley Township here at Northwest Langley, and of course they're moving ahead in North Vancouver. I can't tell you the exact details because Metro Vancouver is looking after all that. And also, we're also working with, in my other committee, with the Indigenous Relations, and we've got a number of, we've got a meeting coming next week and a number of other new issues coming within that community. So that's my report for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just a couple of short things. At our library board meeting in January, I was again voted as the second vice chair, so I look forward to that position till the end of the term. I also wanted for council's information to let us know that at the Climate Action Committee there in January, there was a delegation representing Arosha, and as a result of that, there was a motion that I made, hopefully, but it didn't quite work out this way, to send further detailed concerns regarding the implications of the South Campbell Heights development and industrialization further to the environment and the GHG implications. But we were told to regulatory and other procedural reasons, we weren't allowed to refer it back to Metro Board itself. However, a staff report is coming back to the CAC committee at a future date.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to report that the regional parks overall plan is going out for final public input. This will be done via online opportunities between, I believe it's February and April of this year, with the intent that the final plan go forward to the board for approval in July of 2022. So I encourage council to please participate in that input opportunity from the public. Of course, we're very fortunate to have 4 regional parks within our boundary, so we have a great deal of investment in seeing those parks expand and improve going forward. The other thing I would just like to bring to council's attention, and Councillor Arneson touched on it with regards to the South Campbell Valley Heights application, which is essentially 660 acres to be removed from special study area and put inside the urban containment boundary for the purposes of employment lands. And there continues to be a fair amount of opposition from the public. There is currently a YouTube video out there entitled Top 10 Reasons to Oppose This from an Environmental Perspective. So if anybody on council is interested in watching that, I think we can rightfully assume that this application in Surrey, if it moves forward through final stage on this Friday, will have a significant impact on the Langley-Surrey border between 16th Avenue and 24th Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson, you got something else?
Yes, well, one quick question to Councillor Richter. Don't we have 5 regional parks in Langley?
We may have, I'm sorry.
I think it's the one everybody misses. It's the big bar, isn't it, Mr. Mayor? The one at 272nd and River?
One.
We've got part of that. I think the other part.
That's right.
We used to have 5. One went to Abbotsford over there. Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks. All right. So now we move on to other business, and Councillor Woodward, you have notice of motion.
Yeah, I'll just move the main motion, Mr. Mayor, and then I'll speak to it.
And I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moved by Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Richter. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to read every word out loud, but I'll just go through the whereases and the motion very quickly. I think we both know the history. We all know the history of this now. I think hopefully we have a final decision on the proposed parking lot concept. As we also saw in that information in those staff reports, we've got some buildings there that are vacant, and we've got some that have tenancies that have some time left. I believe 3 to 4 years. So we need some sort of plan there. And then number 3 there, think highlights sort of what I took away from the final council, well, hopefully final decision to not proceed with that parking lot concept, was that we do have a pretty good spirited discussion about it, different ideas about it, lots of potential for that location for the future of downtown Aldergrove. So I'd like to direct staff as follows. They be directed to remove any all vacant buildings. So I've left it pretty general here on purpose, that there's a couple buildings that are vacant, and get going on replacing those with interim parking, similar to what we've done, say, for example, in the Gibbs Nursery site at the LEC. And I've discussed that with management and worked on this is why the reference to the Langley Event Center. And I've also worded it in discussions with management in regards to using available reserves without specifying exactly what they are, where they came from. Mr. Back may want to clarify that. And then to be directed to complete and start a process that involves the public and the community of downtown Aldergrove for what we would like to see that. I'd like to see that get started in earnest, to make it very clear that it's a high priority item for us, including myself and the members of council, to get going on a sincere, open, and transparent discussion with the public on what to do there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and yeah, just to be clear, the final decision wasn't what to do with the lot. The final decision was regarding a grant. So just want to make that clear. Certainly, I would ask for division, A and B, and I'll speak to it now. I certainly think it's great to ask the public. I always was in favor of that, and on what they want to do in that corner. I'm not so sure that to remove the buildings, there may be some interim uses that might come out of this that we can do, because it may be several years before anything is done there. So, and there already is a parking lot there. So, for myself, I'm certainly in favor of B, but not so much in favor of A, because I think B will provide us more information. So, I would move division, but we can. But if there's a second or the division,
I'll second division. I designed it for division.
Okay, thank you. And so, Councilor Woodard, just show of hands. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, so we'll carry on. And mark myself down. So that's now we have Councilor Long, Kuntz, Whitmarsh, Arneson. Councilor Long.
You can divide it any time you want, Your Worship. You're supposed to be running. You are running.
Well, I
the
do
meeting.
ask council.
Well, that's very nice of you. Yeah. Well, I mean, this doesn't make any sense to me at all, because there wasn't really any expansion of the ACUCC contemplated in any of the budget workshops we've had, any of the planning sessions. There was no discussion anywhere. The facility's not even 4 years old, and half of it's been closed with COVID. So this whole concept of expanding the ACUCC, to me, it does not fit in. We had a fabulous project. Of course, the council didn't approve of it. That's fine, I suppose. It's not fine, but that's what happened. And that's really what this is all about. All of a sudden, this is coming back as if now it has to be somebody else's idea, when staff had a great project in mind for that property already. We had public input, massive amounts. In fact, 103 respondents came to the township when we had the plaza concept, or whatever you want to call it, for where the older inn got ripped down. And 74% of them said they wanted some outdoor spaces. So, of course, that's what we were going to proceed with, but that didn't happen. So I don't think this is appropriate that we give any expectation that we're going to spend multi-millions of dollars on some expansion there. I don't know what's going to happen with the buildings. I guess they could get boarded up like other buildings in the township happen to do when they don't get used. That'll be a real shame. And a gravel parking lot in the downtown of Aldergrove, I don't think that's going to be very attractive. The worst part of this motion is this is not an appropriate, in my opinion, and please don't anybody start giving me a hard time about it. I'm entitled to my opinion. This is not a proper use for reserves. Reserves are not there to create some new kind of project that hasn't even been on the books before. We haven't even talked about this until the idea of doing a plaza and getting all this grant money came along, and for some reason council really didn't want to do that. So there's going to be a lot of costs involved with this. Where's that money going to come from? Right out of the taxpayer's pocket. I don't think reserves is an appropriate use for it. It's not in the budget. We had budget discussions this afternoon. I suppose we should put something in the budget if that's what council wants to do. I don't think we should. We should have proceeded, but that boat has somewhat sailed. But it's an awful lot of money that's going to have to be spent now on this new initiative, and I don't know why that had to happen, but here we are. You know, it's a very, very sad day for the taxpayer, because they've basically been pickpocketed of $750,000 that we could have all used. It's gone. So now I don't want to spend other money because we don't have it.
Thank you. Councillor Kunst.
Okay, so it might come as a surprise, but I'd actually, I want to support the buildings coming down, because I actually do not want to see more boarded up buildings in Aldergrove. And, but just to be clear, the proposal I supported last week included taking advantage of $750,000 of federal grant money that, a lot of our township, pay money into those taxes too, so it's just money coming back to them, to take down those buildings, put in an extra parking lot at the ACUCC, because we all know it's needed there, create a really great outdoor space for people to gather in the interim, while allowing time for public feedback for the long-term use of the site, which could include an expansion of the ACUCC. So essentially, it's kind of like the same thing here, with the exception of Aldergrove gets an interim plaza, or an interim parking lot instead of an interim plaza. So I'm a little disappointed how this all went. I feel like we really lost out on an opportunity, and but I don't want to see this site get boarded up. I'd like to sort of figure out what it is that we're going to do there. But, township lost out, so I'm just, making that clear.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, when I saw this in the package, I was kind of a bit surprised, because it looked remarkably similar to what we've just discussed the previous two meetings. The primary difference was that we were going to get a grant money for $750,000 to do the work, and now we have to look for ways out of our own budget to fund it ourselves. So I'm, it's interesting that it's remarkably similar. There is a parking lot, just as we are going to have. There is space to expand the ACUCC, which looks like this could happen if this is passed. We were going to have public input, which this also allows for public input. So there's really not a lot of difference other than who's paying for it. And so I do feel very disappointed that that we are asking our people in the township and the community to pay for it rather than a grant. However, I also don't want to see boarded up buildings. I don't want to see buildings rot there. I want to see great space being used for great things in Aldergrove. It could be possibly expansion of the ACUCC, but I'm also interested in outdoor space and what that might look like. And it may not be part of the ACUCC, but I do like outdoor space for gathering plazas for our community. So I'm open to lots of things, as I was before. And so I'm not necessarily opposed to these motions. I'm just really disappointed that now our public our members of our community have to pay for it, as opposed to a grant. But I'm open to hearing other people and open to hearing the discussion. I definitely want the best for Aldergrove, and I definitely want to move forward and not have this continue to be a discussion point among council. I do want to move forward with something great for Aldergrove, and maybe this is how we're going to have to get to it, but disappointed that we are here in this way today.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make some comments, and I'm not going to re-debate the whole issue of whether or not we should have gone forward with the public plaza. I don't think that that's helpful at this point. So I just want to mention a couple of the points that I thought were really important to me in terms of continuing to move forward with this project. So I think that for me, I know that we've now divided the motion, but I really think that we should be putting the brakes on any kind of decision we're going to be making at this point. So I'm not afraid somehow that we're going to have these derelict buildings that are hanging around there, and that they're going to look horrible, and that they're going to be prone to disease and rodents and things like that. I think we have to look beyond what, superficially we can see in front of us. And so I just wanted to point out, there's been a lot of mention about the fact that how we missed out on all of this money. But I want to point out that we specifically made a budget of 3% or less tax increase this year. We may go a bit about, beyond that, who knows. But these are things that we deliberated about and made very concrete decisions as a council. We've got rising cost, inflation, et cetera, et cetera. So my issue with this is that I don't think that this is a priority. I don't remember any conversation where we decided that this property, we've had copious amounts of conversations about what our priorities are. So here we are in the final year of our term, and I'm very hesitant to say, let's leave it to another council. So I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying instead is that we are in constrained times. And so now what we're talking about is taking money from some unknown reserve fund And I can think of lots of things that I would rather fund at this point that I think are critical to public health and safety, and I wouldn't put them ahead of this one, in addition to the fact that we haven't identified this as a critical need. And so, for example, biodiversity strategy. We have a tree canopy strategy going forward. One of the key elements of it is a biodiversity strategy. It's going to cost us $150,000. My recollection is that it's not funded for this year. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that is my recollection. So as to the demolishing of the buildings, I find it rather extraordinary that we are just thinking, well, the buildings are sitting there and they're not tenanted. To me, this goes against the very principles that I have seen enacted in the township when we have a land banking situation and sort of a vague idea about what we want to do with the property in the future, that we try our best to find some kind of interim tenants so that they can pay for the maintenance and the cost, not to mention the fact that there are community groups that could be made more viable by having a place to meet, but they don't have that opportunity, because if we're going to take those buildings out, then that's a non-starter. So I just think we paid a lot of money for this land. There's still opportunity to continue to use it, most particularly because there's still an ongoing leasehold here. So let's look at defraying the costs. Let's look a little outside the box and not be fear-based in our assessment of what we need to do there. And I think, personally, that we need to start working on the Alder Inn site instead. That site has already been turned into an interim use, and I would encourage council to, rather than scattershot our approach to what we need to do in the downtown core. We've done an excellent job so far in all the things that we've done, but I don't really think that this is going to help our prospects in that, to that end. So I think we need to expeditiously work on the Alder Inn site. We can use the very appropriate and helpful and needed public engagement process to figure out what should be on that site, because most particularly, it will be a symbiotic kind of redevelopment that's going to help the overall downtown core. So I think this is premature. I'm not saying we should never do this, but I don't think the timing is right, because in particular, we've just had our 222 budgeting conversation, and there are a lot of things that very unfortunately are not meeting their, you know, funds aren't available there. And so just generally referring to reserve funds, well, the reserve funds came from taxpayer dollars. They're put aside for specific purposes, so I don't find it particularly helpful either just to say, well, take it from wherever it's available, because my recollection is that our reserve funds are not at the levels that they should be. So I would just encourage council to put the brakes on, consider this as a process, not to say don't do it, but just don't do it now.
Thank you. Councilor Richter.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just think that some of the comments that went earlier didn't actually correctly represent what was going to happen if we got this grant. First of all, they weren't going to get a full plaza. They were only going to get half a plaza. And secondly of all, the majority of work was going to be, or the majority of funds were going to be spent for realigning the road, which is one lane. And so we make it 2 lanes up to the bowling alley, and it goes down to 1 lane again, which didn't make a whole bunch of sense to me in the first place. But having said that, what concerns me is, and this is a question that I would ask through to staff, those buildings that are on this lot. So we've got the old sushi restaurant, and we've got the little strip mall. What are the costs to the township of keeping these buildings in operational shape right now versus the costs of removing them?
Mr. Backman.
Your worship, the operational costs would likely be such things as security, electricity, gas, water, what may be necessary just to preserve them in their current state. and probably, depending upon the length of it, some protection of the exterior, and again, that may fall under security. In terms of maintaining those elements, they're not inexpensive, but they're not that expensive. In terms of demolition, we haven't been able to complete a full assessment in terms of to evaluate the level of any, I guess, hazardous materials. Given the age of it, it's possible there may have been the use of some asbestos, but if we rule that out, a good rule of thumb would be about $100,000 per building for demolition for concrete brick buildings of that nature. Now, it certainly could be less, and if it was an older building, it could be more, but I think that it's a good rule of thumb to suggest that, because as we compared to a previous building we'd talked about in another session, another place, that was a number we'd used.
Yeah, well, I'm in agreement with comments made by other members of council here that the last thing I want to see is boarded up buildings in Aldergrove. We went through that for a period of time with the Alder Inn after the fire. We still have the whole Aldergrove shopping mall that the Janda people are redeveloping that's been boarded up for years now and not taken down. So I would like to see us remove those buildings. And I also would like to see us consult with the public on what they really want at that particular location. Because from my perspective, there's been conflicting input from the public about what they want at that location. And we need to clarify that first. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's interesting. By the way, the visit I did the other day was New York, the site too. I did go there as well. The discussion we had last time, which we went through twice on the plaza, was a permanent site rather than a temporary, and that was a concern to me. I was more concerned about having a temporary site, not a permanent site where you can't do anything in the future. Okay. Part of it, if I may question through the chair of the staff, there was so much was the grant. How much was the TOL going to participate? How much were we going to put into that? If I may, through the chair.
Your Worship, the grant for this portion of the lot was $750,000, and that represented 75% of the budget. So the total project would have been $1 million.
So about $250,000 of taxpayers' money. So I mean, I was mentioned earlier on by another councillor about the fact that the taxpayers weren't going to put any money into that last project, and they were. And so there's an example of $250,000. I'm not sure where the money would come for this, but it wasn't 100% grant. There was money coming out of taxpayers for that permanent plaza, which I was concerned about. This is an opportunity. It's not, maybe, I've heard many members of council speak, maybe it's not what everybody wants, but it's an opportunity for the public to have another say about if they did have something that they wanted, what would it be? And as there has been conflicting comments from the public as to what some would see, what others wouldn't see. And so that's what's kind of surprising or having difficulty with the council. I, too, don't want to see boarded up buildings. I say it's time to move on and to make the necessary improvements and also plan for the future. We've been saying that, planning for the future, something excellent for Aldergrove for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much. It's been said a few times, do not board up the buildings. Do not board up the buildings. I don't know if we could use those buildings or not. And I don't know if I would want to, because we bought this piece of property to move ahead with the pool and the ice rink in place. A couple which I would call negatives. I'm thinking council priorities. Is this a council priority? I would say yes. And I'm concerned about the timing. It says spring and summer. Spring and summer. I could see tearing the buildings down, but the public input might be kind of rushed And if, whether or not it gets to be on council priorities or not is another thing. I want to see what has been mentioned, the best for Aldergrove. I like, it's whether or not you like the timing of it and how it got here. I think that the division is a good thing here. But I am concerned about trying to get public input by summer. Summer, not much happens in the summertime, except in that location. It can get pretty busy in that location. But anyhow, I'm just worried about, I'm not worried about the intent of the motion. We need public input. Let's get the best, but whether or not it gets on council priorities is something else too. But I think that I'm looking like I'm going to support it at this point.
Thank you. Council Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just gonna just clarify here. I think we got to clarify a couple of things. Mr. Backen, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Backen.
Yeah, sure.
To address the couple of issues that have come up. Was the money from the potential grant application, if it had been successfully awarded and secured, was that money available for abatement and demolition? Could it have been used within the grant funding to abate and demolish those buildings? Or would that have come from reserves anyway?
Your Worship, Mr. Seffi is more familiar with the actual conditions of the grant. Mr. Seffi, as to the grant, could the $250,000 portion of the township's money have been used for demolition and abatement?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that I'm going to have to go back and watch the council meetings because I think that contradicts what we were told during the debate. So it'd be good to get that clarified. I recall very specifically that the grant money was not available for abatement and demolition. So I'd like to get that clarified. I'll go back and rewatch the meetings. I think that the situation here is, the favor of the parking lot, for example, that so-called parking lot concept would have been paying for that out of the grant money. We would have been tied to that concept for many years. And this is attempting to achieve a true interim project, not completed in 2025, as the original concept was, as confirmed at the last meeting with the KFC tenancy. We can find that interim balance that wasn't in the previous proposal, which would have been semi-permanent for a very long period of time. So in this one, this is trying to move forward with a concept on the site that finds a balance between what we do in other areas of the township as well, providing for the interim use while getting going as quickly as possible on what we're going to be doing with that site. The timing of B is outlined very clearly that way to try to lay the groundwork for the next council and try to save Aldergrove 6 to 12 months. As we're seeing with the delays in making any sort of substantial progress on the rezoning of the Alder Inn site. Here we are in February now, and we don't have that yet. So I think I would like to get going on that, lay the groundwork so that, it's not starting in the spring of 2023 or the summer of 2023. Then it's not coming back till Christmas, and now you're into 2024. I'd like to try to save some time for downtown Aldergrove, and that's why the timing is in there. I'm assuming the public input process is very similar to what we've seen for other recreation projects, such as in Fort Langley, which is mostly online and being collected and posted that way over a period of a few months and then summarized in a report, which can then be part of the public record and available to the next council to try to, again, save downtown Aldergrove up to 6 to 12 months on making real progress on this project. For me, it's pretty simple that we need to get going on a pretty significant process to do something better for downtown Aldergrove there, not try to have these buildings half tenanted. The restaurant building on the corner, it's not a building that I think has much life left in it. Restaurant tenancies are going to need years and years of lease term in order to make that work. We need to get on with what we're going to be doing there, involving beginning the transition to something more permanent. And so this is a goal to try to do that without taking grant money under a pretense of something that's not going to be there for very long when it has 17 trees on it and so on. We need to get on with a process that involves a consultation with the community, sincere, open, and transparent consultation before we build a project, not after. Thank you.
Councilor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a couple of questions, maybe to staff. So what I heard was a couple $100,000 to demolition the buildings, approximately. Does that include the cost of having a gravel parking lot and sort of finished it in the way that this motion is suggesting?
Your worship, the challenge with the site is once the buildings are gone is going to be the elevation issue. That would usually involve some level of grading or some level of sloping. At this point, I don't think that would be significant, but it wouldn't be included in our very, very, very general estimate of what it costs per building. It would have to be something that's added, but I think it would be relatively modest in comparison to the construction, because we'd be looking at really taking it from the east side elevation and trying to level it to the street, and just making sure that all other services and exterior components such as sidewalks and pathways remain untouched.
Okay, thank you. The idea of the public input, currently the public input is largely done online, and this motion suggests starting in spring and summer. There is the possibility, as things are progressing, that possibly by late summer, maybe even into early fall, we might be able to seek some other types of public input, maybe back to some forms of face-to-face input. Would it make, is it possible, I mean, I guess it's possible, that's probably not the right question, maybe it's just a statement, that I would suggest that maybe we could start in the spring or summer, but I'm not opposed to having the public input continue into the fall if there was opportunity for some more maybe traditional face-to-face opportunities to speak into it. 1 or 2 months here or there is probably not going to make a difference. I do agree with Councillor Woodward that we should get going on it, but to frame it that it has to be completed in the summer, I'm not sure I would suggest that. One of the other concerns I have, and I know some councillors suggested adding or allowing some people to maybe temporarily use the buildings that are there, maybe groups in our community that need space and so on. But one of my concerns is that once we start doing that, it's difficult to sometimes remove groups or have them leave the premises. What options are available to us as a township if we wanted to do some kind of temporary use of a facility? Can we lease it for 3 months or 6 months and those kind of things, or a year? What options are available to us?
Your worship, we certainly can, but it's been the township's history that once we've had some altruistic use that's relatively short term, that we can't preclude the individual or group from coming back before council to say, this has been a great success, let us continue this operation on site or some other location. So while it certainly can be done, it requires the recognition of council that we can certainly make it a condition legally, but we can't make it a condition publicly that precludes anyone from coming to council to seek a variation of a previous council decision.
Okay, that's helpful, kind of in line with where I was thinking. It makes sense to me, probably based on that information, that we do remove the buildings as opposed to trying to come up with some temporary use. But I recognize that any project that we do there is probably going to cost us a fair bit of money, and so it's unlikely it's going to happen within the next 1 or 2 years, but certainly the public input process should start as soon as possible, and there's no doubt that we do need more parking anyways by the ACUCC. So, all right, thank you very much.
Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I guess my point would be on B, knowing that there is a few things going to be developed in Aldergrove that, hasn't really even started yet. That might help, the public to make a decision about what they want to do with that, little corner. It's not little, it's substantial. So maybe we would expand that time for public opportunity to input opportunities so that, they can make the best decision. So I don't know, can we expand that spring and summer to, I don't know, what would be an appropriate time frame? But yeah, how do we?
Mr. Backen?
We certainly could, Your Worship. I guess it really depends on what sort of public input we're seeking. I mean, if it's a blank slate, that could range from putting up a building to making a playing field. I use those as extreme examples, either which is realistic. I think it's doable. It really comes down to council, though, and that may be a decision for a later day, to provide some parameters for those things being considered, because I'm concerned that if we simply go into the blank slate scenario, we may have a number of options that some may be good, some may be practical, some may not be so good, some may not be impractical, but it's going to leave it to a complete blank slate for an area next to a known recreation center that's very busy and has some very high traffic demands and high pedestrian demands and high parking demands that has to be all reconciled. So I would suggest before lengthening the time period, it would be prudent to have a discussion on the terms of reference for that consultation so that we are getting useful information back and just not a lot of information back.
Right, because I think what would be important is knowing what we can actually do at that site before we open it up to people just saying they want to call all kinds of stuff when it might not ever even be possible. So I don't know. I guess I'm trying to figure out what to do with B, but obviously supportive of public input. Just wonder, what the best way to do that would be.
Thank you. One suggestion would be when we get to B is that it could be referred to staff to come back with a report, which we normally do with something like this,
Okay.
On a public input process. And that would allow council to have some discussion on the terms of reference and what they wish to see. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, and the idea to extend the input period isn't bad, except for the fact that this is an election year. And if we extend it over the election, then it's going to become an election issue. And it won't be this council's decision to approve or deny. It'll go to the next council anyway. So if we were going to extend the time, maybe it should be till December of 2022 with a report to the new council in January 2023. I just throw that out for consideration. During an election year, sometimes a lot of things get promised that never get delivered, and that's not a good thing to set the public up for, I don't think.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll go to the vote for A and B unless there's a motion to amend or anything, but we've had a good discussion. Thank you. So I'm going to go to A and ask council, all those in favor and opposed? Councillor Long, Councillor Arneson, Mayor Froese opposed. That carries. We go to B. If you want to push your Councillor Whitmarsh.
Pushing here, sorry.
All right, Councillor Whitmarsh, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to make a referral motion to staff to come back with some recommendations around public input, maybe length of time. I appreciate the information both from Councillor Woodward and Councillor Richter.
Do you want me to just make the motion first?
Sorry.
I'm not going to speak to it. Okay.
I'll make
so what's
the motion.
To?
The motion is to refer to staff for input on an appropriate public input process.
And thank you. It's a second by Councillor Davis. Okay, on the referral, any discussion? Call the question. Oh, Councillor.
No. Sorry, I want to ask for the.
Go ahead, Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. Thought there might be more discussion on this. So I just want to, so we're looking for terms of reference and some other suggestions on what to ask about. I'm not clear what's going to come back.
Mr. Seffi, based on that referral motion, what do you anticipate? I think it's basically it would come back to council with a little bit more fulsome report on what the public input would look like and some costs attached to it. So I see him nodding.
And timelines, Your Worship.
And timelines.
Yeah, Your Worship, that would be included, but I think the question goes a bit more deeper in terms of recommendations on the appropriate public input process. It'd be helpful to understand is that just simply as to a process or to what the terms of reference for that process should be, because I think that's the crux of it, is simply to say the process should be 90 days, should start here and end there, and we'll have 4 meetings, or is it to actually provide some context for it? I'm not sure what the mover intended.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to get to is whether the result here is essentially to prevent a spring and summer consultation without making that motion. So the problem is that if you come back and so we're going to get the report when, who knows when, we'll get it when we get it. And the concern is if you're trying to delay it to not be possible this year, then just make that motion. I'm just curious when we might expect to see it come back.
Okay, I think staff would have to put it in the work plan. It would come back. I would think we still have some time left in winter. It is not February yet. It's still January. So what's your anticipation, Mr. Backen?
I think it really depends on the previous question in terms of the recommendations on the appropriate public input process. If it's process only, it could be fairly quickly. If it's substantive, including the terms of reference, that could certainly take longer to consider that in the context of the plan, of the facility, and our land holdings and all those pieces.
Yeah, I think it's the process would be helpful for council, and then they can carry on if they wish to go ahead with it or wish to advance it more. But at least we'd have something more than this, just this motion to go on.
So it's really just to come back relatively expeditiously with what the process could look like without putting the parameters of that process in place. Thank you.
Allows council more.
Just maybe, Mr. Mayor, without getting too far, question I have then is, is there precedent for this? I don't recall a step to go to this level of terms of reference to ask the community for ideas for the Fort Langley consultation. Is there a terms of reference that can be sent for other examples, or is it only in Aldergrove where we do this?
Yeah, but this motion doesn't ask for terms of reference. That just asks for staff to come back with some parameters we can.
Well, this is why I'm confused what the motion is going to generate from staff, because I didn't mention terms of reference. Everybody else is mentioning that, right?
Okay. Mr. Backen?
We understand that there is not the intention to include a terms of reference. It's simply to staff to comment on what the process would look like. So likely duration, form, public meetings, online, something in between, and effectively a timeline. So.
And I also heard some potential comments on trying to restrict the range public input, like trying to give people potential ranges of what they can choose from. That's what I've heard as well. See some shaking heads now, but the idea there was that their concern might be that we'll get all kinds of different ideas coming back. Is it fair? Because
that would be after the public consultation begins. I think at this point, council is looking at just some further information from staff on what the public consultation will look like based on this motions.
That's correct, Your Worship. If it's simply as to the process, there's nothing then that will be restricting anything. It's simply what a process would look like. Again, timeline, duration, high benchmarks in terms of it should be 3 meetings, 2 meetings, should not be meetings, it should be something else. It's really a process question without any substance.
Yeah, and so I'd actually, I'm on the verge of supporting this if there's going to be some thought that it doesn't preclude a spring-summer timeline. But I think it's going to be hard to get that, and without that, then it seems like a backdoor way of simply preventing it from occurring this year, at least without knowing roughly when it's going to come back. If that's the intent, fine, but that seems to be where it's headed, potentially, given like something like the Alder Insight, where I think we're supposed to get a report on that last year. We don't have it, so I'm a little concerned that maybe this just ends up going to the last couple of meetings before the summer break, and then everybody declares there isn't enough time, and it was done through a different process rather than just voting it down.
Thanks.
So how do we get some guarantee, like some thoughts?
That's what we're asking staff to come back with some sort of report on. You're asking if there's precedent. I've seen lots of precedent where staff come back with a report on what the public consultation will look like. I don't have no idea what it's going to look like at this point, where this motion doesn't tell me. So I think that's what we're attempting, and have it come back expeditiously so we can then we have a better understanding. Right now we have a few words in front of us that there's going to be some sort of public consultation. Nobody knows what it looks like. I think that's what we're trying to get at.
Okay, well, I'll definitely search the archives for those presidents, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
I didn't say in this place, but Metro Vancouver always gives us a report on public process that they're doing and a variety of things, and I'm sure we've done it here too. So
we're not in Metro Vancouver.
I don't care. You asked for precedents, Councillor Woodward, and I'm just saying this is very common practice throughout the region. You can research all you want and tell me I'm wrong. I really don't care. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you. There's certainly not an attempt to try and stop public input or delay it. I'm trying to get it done as quickly as we can. I just would like to know what some of the process would be, online, possible face-to-face, what the timeline is, how long it could take. I don't want to be limited to that it has to be completed by the last meeting of July 2022. This motion says it should be completed within the spring and summer. So I wanted to get started, but if it came back and said, look, we're going to go into October, I'd probably be open to it. I just want to hear from staff on what is a good process to follow and timeline, and how we're going to do that so we can get as much input as we possibly can, not to limit it in any way. I'm in fact the opposite. Let's open it as much as we can. I'm also interested in getting as many ideas as we can for it, for sure. One of the things that would be helpful, I think, is to be able to, as part of that public process, is to let the the community know exactly what we are doing and what is going to be happening in Aldergrove over the next 5 to 10 years. We know what the land at 272, we know that's going to be developed. We know that the mall is going to be redeveloped, and there's all sorts of things. And while we know what that is, the community might not understand what all those pieces are totally. So for them to know that as part of the public input process would allow them to give better public input. When they know exactly all the other things that are going to be happening in Aldergrove, they can really think for what do we want in this special piece of land. So I'm here to try and promote and get as much public input as we can, get it done as fast as we can. I'm just simply asking for the process. That's all I'm asking for. No way am I trying to slow it down or to limit anything.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councilor Long opposed. Councilor Woodward opposed. Carries. All right. Other business. Any other business? Councilor Richter.
Yes, I have 5 items here, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I'd like to start first by referring the craft delegation to staff for a report on what can be done about the 196th Street.
Yeah, that should be a motion. If you want to move that, is there a seconder?
I'm moving that.
To refer to staff. Second by Councilor Arneson. Councilor Long, is that on the motion? Or no, okay. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And it carries. Thank you. Okay.
My second item is I would like to refer the Roman delegation to staff for a report on the best funding source. I had suggested council contingency, but the grant program may be eligible. Maybe the money that we got from the provincial government for getting getting rec programs back up and running.
Yep, thank you. So moved and seconded by Councilor Ferguson, and I think that's fine. So, Councilor Richter, yeah, did you want to speak any further to it? I'm just trying to get the motion on that.
No, but I would also, if we're going to send it for a report, I was also wondering if staff could give some consideration to their share of the rental fees for the boathouse, given their extreme financial situation right now.
Okay, to include that in. Thank you. Okay, Councilor Long.
Yeah, I mean, I did some research, and it does probably qualify for the sports hosting grant, which is about $1,000. I don't think we should be mentioning waiving fees because, as I've said, this has happened many a time over the years. Everybody has a good cause going. Everybody would like to see the township subsidize their fees. That's why we should not take it out of council contingency, and we shouldn't actually be encouraging people to waive fees. We should be encouraging them to apply for grants that bring good things to the township, that support activities for the township, and that's what the sports hosting grant does. So I'm happy to support, but I'm not sure what it is I'm supporting now because there's been a few other mentions. If it's going to be referred to staff, I don't think we need to report. I think it can be referred to staff to connect Ms. Roman with staff in terms of this grant.
Yeah,
same thing, I guess.
Yeah, same thing, and staff can come back with those.
Yeah, maybe Mr. Backen could speak on that because I think there is grant availability. I think through your worship.
Yeah, Mr. Backen.
Your worship, we have been able to confirm that there is funding available in the grant program. So council's option, I guess, is to refer to the grant program where there is money, or council could actually simply dispose of the request, recognizing that it's acceptable under the grant program based on what they've heard here today.
Yeah, okay. That's what I prefer to do.
Councilor Richter?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think this is a matter of staff making a recommendation to council about what they consider to be the best funding source. And they have a number of options that they can look at. That was the intent of this motion.
Yep.
And I think staff should make that recommendation.
Thank you, and you're correct. It is in keeping with the policy when a delegation comes in front of council, we generally give it a little bit of cooling off and get some information from staff.
And Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I could also note, I believe that we have used council contingency in the past to waive fees as well.
To cover the fees, yes, that's certainly one of the options. Councillor Kunst?
Yeah, I think maybe they should also knock on Tourism Langley door because I know that they also have potentially, I'm not sure, I can't remember what the criteria was, but that might be something that they could look into if they're doing a regatta.
Certainly. I think staff can take a look at that. Okay, I'll call the question on referral. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Councilor Richter, you had 3 more items?
Yeah, my third one is I was contacted by a resident this weekend by email, and I followed up with a phone call. I'm not sure if this resident may have contacted other members of council. I suspect they may have. It's Mr. Sigalet, who lives at 237 and 64th Avenue. Anyway, the matter that he wants to bring to council's attention is that there is a large log jam of, a large jammed up block of dead trees and logs on the south side of the Fraser, or of the Salmon River that feeds into Williams Park. People on council may know it as the swimming hole that the kids go to in the summertime. And what he told me was that the river on the south side has changed course, and the river is now cutting under the hillside toward the power line. And he's very concerned that the bridge there may wash out because the infrastructure is being undermined by the river changing course. So I wanted to bring this to council's attention, and I was wondering if staff could maybe go out and have a look at it and just bring a report or a recommendation to council as to whether we need to put this on an emergency prepare list to remove the trees. I think once the trees are gone, the course of the river might recorrect itself.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Safi has that information, so you'll look into it. Thanks. Okay.
He'll look into it? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
My fourth item is the PAC president for the Donna Gabriel Robbins Elementary School sent an email to me. I'm sure they probably sent it to other members of council. It came through at about 11 a.m. this morning with regards to the playing field adjacent to the school. And I was wondering if staff could perhaps give us a report, and I can make a motion on this as well, Mr. Mayor, if you want, with regards to, is it our job to provide that playing field now because the school is occupied? And if it is our job, is it going to happen in 2022?
Okay, so perhaps prior to a motion, staff could just bring us that information back, then we could look at it from there.
Sure, yeah. And the last item is in the items distributed to us on January 20th, item number 21 on page 78. There's a letter there from 3 residents down in South Langley, 8th Avenue and 256th Street, with regards to a project, a culvert under 256 or on the Bertrand Creek. And they want to know that this is included for flooding mitigation reasons as a project in budget 2022. I guess it's a culvert replacement. And I'm wondering if staff could follow up on that for us, or if it is a funded project right now, I don't think it needs any more follow-up, but these people would like reassurance that it'll be taken care of this year.
Okay, staff will follow up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all my items.
Any other business? Councilor Ferguson?
Really quick one. Thank you. I made through. I don't know if you need a motion. It's items for distributed to council January 24th. Item number 7, an email from Terry Veer regarding the cost of housing. And perhaps maybe staff could send him a copy of our housing plans and policies from Langley or through Mr. Ward or something.
Sure. Yeah, we can send the housing action plan out to him.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. And so with that, I'll ask for a motion to resolve into special closed. Councilor Arneson moves, second by Councilor Kunst. And Councilor Richter, your hand is still up. Is that, do you want to add something?
Yes, no, I'd like to add a personnel item, please.
No, okay. Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And a motion to terminate. Councilor Davis moves termination, seconded by Councilor Kunst. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, what do we need? It would take 5 minutes? Okay.